Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Tonight, we've got a very special guest, Ashish, who is going to tell us a lot of really deep, intelligent stuff about AI and all the rest of the stuff. He'll get into it. But first, let's go to Nick. Nick, how you doing? What you got coming out? Tell us about your herbal video that just popped out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that it seems like I seem to be getting, like you even mentioned, good reviews already. I'm getting some good comments. It is a different way of looking at it. I do cover the like kind of the occult angle, the witchcraft angle, maybe even like a little bit of history. Like I forgot what it might have been, peppermint or something, spearmint, something I was mentioning, like even I think in Greek Greek history, Greece, they'd wear it around their heads as like to help them study or something when they took tests, some random shit like that. Like I'm throwing all that stuff in there, and then I'll go into how it actually affects your 12 cranial nerves. And when you start seeing like what it's actually doing to you, your vagus system and your if it basically like they some affect like up to 3 at a time, and that gets pretty interesting when it starts doing that. Your trigeminal, your Vegas system, and maybe one other one. But yeah, long story short, I think it's interesting for people to see like what some of these things actually do when you just inhale them, what kind of effects it's going to have on your body and how you're going to feel afterwards. And some of them that I even show, if you decide to just all of a sudden go in crazy dosages with it, you'll notice it starts to shut your system down. And I start to wonder about that with maybe shamanistic rituals. That's why you were fumigating that stuff. So it's just interesting to see the kind of science with these things, because you start to wonder, did they know this back then? Because like the effects that you'll see, like that would be in like Scott Cunningham's book about what these herbs are going to do for you, you can see, well, that's what it's doing to you fucking physically just from inhaling it or putting it on your skin. So
Right?
you almost wonder, like, are we still getting it twisted? You know what I'm saying? Is there still more science, unfortunately, with that stuff? And somehow it got woo-wooed. I don't know. Did we lose the original, I guess, a cult idea behind it? Something like that. So check it out. It is getting good reviews. I was a little surprised it actually has as many comments as it does now. So yeah, it's got about 3 parts. One dropped today. We got a few other ones that'll be coming out. I got part 2 of the colors coming out. I should have Johannes Kepler dropping in like 2 weeks. I should be editing that up, and that will be out. And I got Untermeyer Park that should be dropping within the week, I'm hoping. So yeah, we got a bunch of shit coming out. I have a bunch of stuff edited. I just haven't actually wrapped it all up yet. But yeah, then we do have some stuff going forward. We'll be covering the Stargate project next week. Again, it's going to be a big group of the whole Cult Rejects team. We'll be here covering more of the Stargate or Gateway project paperwork, whatever that shit was. Yeah, so that should be interesting. So we got a lot of stuff coming. Thank you.
All right. Sounds awesome. Ashish, tell the people about what you've been through. Tell them about who you are and what you do.
Hi, good to be back on, guys. Thanks for having me. In case you don't know me from the last times I was on here, my name's Ashish. My background is in artificial intelligence and in finance. I spent 10 years working in finance as a trader for Edward Jones Investments, and part of my responsibilities were covering tech at the time. After that, I transitioned full-time into AI, and I was specifically trying to apply AI to computer vision. And the presentation I want to give today is related to that because AI is a hot topic. And I think one of the things that's happening, just like every other subject we've seen, there's a massive amount of distortion that's happening in AI. And what I want to do is I want to help people. So a lot of people think that AI is like a super advanced subject that's impossible to tackle or understand unless you have some kind of like background in computer science. And to be honest, it's not really necessary. I hope I can make this accessible for people to understand real AI. And I think it's really important that people understand this because there's so many profound things that are actually true about AI that are not really publicly discussed. And so one of the big topics that is kind of a big deal with AI, and a lot of people who are doomers on AI, they think that there's some kind of artificial life form that's about to be created, and this artificial life form will turn into the Terminator or some apocalyptic scenario, something like that. Hopefully, what I can do here is bring a little bit of rationality to the subject without getting overly technical, but there are a couple of technical concepts that I want to explain. I'll make it easy. And I also want to be able to show what real AI is and how you know what real AI is with versus what is not, because there's a lot of junk AI out there. So let's just kind of start with like, what is AI? Like fundamentally at a kindergarten level, what is AI? AI is a mathematical function, and it is primarily based on a reward and cost. There's a function for reward that can be basically anything you want. And then there's a function for cost for that same reward, which can also basically be whatever you want. And the objective in AI is to make these two functions resemble real life as much as possible. So this is really what AI is. It's a type of pattern recognition math, and this pattern recognition math is intense. It's extremely large. Some of these models can have billions of weights, and I'll kind of explain a little bit about that. And because of the massive size of these models, they're also energy intense. And the energy, you may know in America, there's this huge push for energy investment lately. We're spending trillions upon trillions of dollars, multiple trillions of dollars into both our energy grid and energy utilities. And then on top of that, AI as well is also independently receiving, or trillions of dollars are independently being invested in AI. So there are two major energy intense aspects of AI. There is the training side, which is like what you do to build the model. And then there's the inference side, which is what happens after the model's already done. You deployed it, there's people's hands, and then they do a query on something like ChatGPT or whatever. And then that query has a small amount of energy that's required to do this thing called inference, which then outputs your answer, outputs your result. Now, the training side is massive, and the inference side individually is very small. But where the massive energy constraint comes from is the scale. So once these developed models get deployed out into the world, the energy demand from the sum total of them all combined, that's where the energy intensity goes through the roof. So two sides that are heavily energy intense that are required in order to make AI work. So what you can see from this, though, and what you should kind of interpret in your head just starting with this, is that if an AI model requires that much energy in order to generate the model and then be able to use it, you're probably in the vacuum stage, vacuum tube stage, because this is nowhere near the efficiency of the compute that happens in the human brain. And I'm going to start relating.
Hold on, Ashish, because I think this is a two-way street. It's not only just taking everything that you're, sort of. It's not only taking your questions; it's taking all of the information together. So this is a massive data gathering tool as well as a data, output tool. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
so
that's the main sort of correlation that's being drawn here. I think they're sucking up a lot of core information, psychological information about each one of us, how we interact with it.
Yep, and the kind of that kind of description that you just gave, that is most relevant to the concept of LLMs, which are large language models. So this is like your ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, whatever. Take your flavor of the month. There's so many. These things. This is a good thing you mentioned that, because what I want to show here, and one of the things that I'm hoping to promote, is that computer vision is a way better, more accurate version of AI than a large language model. So what I was going to say earlier was that I'm relating AI to the brain. And what I was originally trying to do here, when I was working on AI, was to model artificial intelligence off the human brain. So you're going to hear me relate to the human brain many times in this presentation. And I'll get to that because that's a big part of what I'm doing here. So one of the things to know about that is that in a large language model, an LLM, is a pattern recognition math built around literally language, text. And if you think about the human brain, the language center of the brain is a very small part of the brain right here, over here. It's a very small part, actually. And I'm not saying it's not important. A large language model and that technology is important, but that is not what's going to get you to this artificial life form. And that's controversial to say because there's so many people that think that a large language model will just suddenly become this artificial life form. But language is not a life. That's not how language is a form of pattern recognition math. And the easy way to understand this without having any understanding of the math behind it is if you walk into a room and there are 10 people speaking different languages that you've never heard before. Not languages that you don't understand but have heard before. No, no, no. Languages that you've never heard before. And you will not be able to distinguish between all that noise one voice from another. However, if one of those 10 people starts speaking English in that room, all of a sudden you'll be able to zone in on that wavelength and filter it out, and you'll be able to hear the English from the noise. This is how you know that language is a pattern recognition math, and you're not born with language. Another thing to understand about language, two people in this world can hear the same sound and interpret something totally different from that sound. In other words, there can be a word in English
Totally agree.
and then another word in a different language that sounds exactly the same that mean two totally different things. Two different people can understand two different things from the same sound. So this is how you know that language is an acquired skill that is a form of pattern recognition. And this is not anything that you would call a life form. This is a talent, you could say, but it isn't a life form. And one of the other things is, and I actually brought this up just so you could see in case anyone forgot from their 7th grade science class, but the definition of life to this day still does not include intelligence. And in my opinion, intelligence is equal to life. These definitions, if you read what this is saying here on the screen, the actual definition of life, this sounds like primates trying to describe humans. Horribly, by the way. This is not the definition of life. If you take away reproduction, for example, is part of life. It is an essential element of what is considered life. If you took away reproduction from everything on Earth tomorrow, does that mean there's no life on Earth? That isn't how life works. So what I'm trying to argue here is that intelligence is part of the definition of life. And in case you're interested, there's something else that I want to say before I get into the actual formal presentation as a little setup here. So if you're interested in understanding more about intelligence and perception, my home base is perception, by the way. In AI, my focus area was perception. If you want to understand perception, it turns out, and what I'm going to demonstrate in this presentation, it turns out that computer vision by accident implicitly understands neuroscience. And I'll describe this in detail as I go through the presentation, but if you want to learn more about what I'm talking about on the neuroscience side, which I'm not going to do too much about, I'll talk mostly on the AI side, but if you want to learn more about the neuroscience side, I highly recommend this lecture series. And this one will break it down easy enough for you to understand some basic neuroscience about vision. So computer vision, in my opinion, doesn't get the rep that it deserves in AI. And here's something to note about all of this. So as I was saying, intelligence is not part of the definition of life. My dad was a neurologist and a psychiatrist. My mom is a pharmacist with a bunch of degrees and all this stuff. They're still disappointed that I'm not a doctor. And what is interesting and what I've learned over the years is two major things. So number one, in evolution, one of the first structures that was ever evolved was a photoreceptor attached to a flagella. A photoreceptor just says, so a flagella is a tail, and it was a photoreceptor was attached to it, and a photoreceptor just says whether light exists or not, yes or no, 1 or 0. And so you can see that this is the beginning of binary math, whether light exists or does not exist. So another thing that is commonly known, but often forgotten, is that eyeballs are brain cells. So this is very important to understand. In the human eye, the ratio of cones, there are these two types of cells. There's these rod-shaped cylinders, which are gray, and they determine grayscale. They determine basically opacity, light, the gradient of light, brightness of light, and grayscale. And then they have these cones, RGB, red, blue, red, green, blue. The ratio on this is roughly 26, 3, 1, roughly. If you're a female, you'll probably have a little bit more blue. So 20 for 20, the ratio of cones in the human eye is overweighted gray cylinders at a ratio of 20 on the gray, 6 on the red, 3 on the green, and then 1 or a little bit higher than 1 if you're a female on the blue cones. So that's interesting. And the part that I'm going to skip in the neuroscience is about V1 through V4 cortex in the visual cortex. And this is outside of the purview of the presentation. But if you want to go deeper down the eyeball route, I highly recommend, after watching this presentation on the AI side for me, if you want to understand what I was saying earlier about how computer vision experts implicitly, whether they know it or not, accidentally already understand the visual cortex just from computer vision, because computer vision is doing exactly what the visual cortex is doing. Exactly. It is literal. And I'm going to show published papers that demonstrate this. So what I'm saying is that computer vision in the modern day is mimicking the brain. And this is published and known, and computer vision experts, whether they know it or not, accidentally figured out the visual cortex and understand it implicitly. An example of this, in computer vision, we understand why you want to use grayscale to detect motion first. It's energy efficient, and that's what happens in V1, and that's why you have predominantly gray cylinders in your eyeball. And then there are functional purposes for RGB as well, and this is also discussed in computer vision. Okay, so that was a good little preamble for the setup, and hopefully you're seeing that this is shit that no one's ever talked about, and this is real AI.
Have you spent a lot? Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, this is right up your alley. He's equated all of these symbols in occultism directly to the eyeball. And the eyeball is so central to occultism in general. I mean, it's in the word itself. And he breaks down all of these symbols and how they relate to stuff. And it's just like, yeah, it's brain tissue. This is what's programming.
I also know the connection in spirituality, and I wasn't going to discuss it that much, but here's something to know. In the beginning, there was light. And another thing about, I know a lot about that, but that's a whole wormhole. And if I say something about it, we'll have to go for like an hour. But in other words, yeah, there is, there's a lot of indication that in religion, that there was an understanding of evolution, especially in Hinduism. There was an understanding of evolution, and there's a lot of not just written documentation of this, but there's also archaeology that demonstrates this. Literal, you can see it with your own eyes, thousands and thousands of years old, and they're demonstrating that they understood evolution and more beyond that.
You know, so
real quick,
zinc calcium. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Let's go ahead.
Okay, the zinc calcium reaction at conception. It's a flash of light.
Yeah, it's kind of like the piezoelectric effect.
Real quick, Ashish, I think it's interesting. There was when your boy, I think you're actually friends with him, Praveen. He was at Cosmic Summit. I went up to him and I said something to him. I was trying to explain to him. I was like, I know like what you were showing on the screen, you were showing with something else. I said, but have you ever wondered like if those are depictions of inside your eyeball? And he like lost it. Like I looked like I literally like freaked him out.
Yeah.
He like sat down and just started eating this food. He's like, oh yeah. I was like, yo, I literally just bugged this guy the fuck out, but like, you get it.
Yeah. Praveen is one of my most favorite people.
Maybe you can tell him that, and he'll take it a little bit more serious.
I've talked his ear off about this stuff. He's fully aware of every.
I don't know. He looked like he was bugged out when I said something to him.
Well, I didn't know Praveen at that time.
Okay.
I had just met Praveen at that time, so he didn't know much about me at that time. But we became good friends over time.
Oh, nice.
I'm actually going to go to Cambodia with him in a couple months or a few months.
Nice.
Damn,
That's
dude,
awesome.
be careful on those planes.
Yeah, a lot of yeah.
Yo, we'll have to get you
So,
on one day to talk about the eyeballs. I did like a 5 or 6, I don't know how many part series with cult symbolism in the eye, but if you ever want to come back on and talk about that shit, we can talk about the
oh,
eyeballs all day, man.
oh
I
man,
love that
I've
shit.
yeah,
A lot of my,
I
a
can.
lot of all my art. Believe it or not, you see the crossing
Yeah,
there of the arms? That's the crossing of the optic nerve.
yeah,
Like a lot of my
and
art literally is depicting the inside of the eyeball. The one that I have, like a chick, it looks like she's on a seashell. That's like
yeah,
the hyaloid canal and the ora serrata, and then the aqua humor underneath. I totally, all my shit's all basically depicted on an eyeball on the brain,
yeah,
man.
and don't forget about the pineal gland, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we got all, and then the third eye and everything. Yeah, there's quite a lot to do with vision, and uh, one of the, how do I say? So one of there's another thing that I want to discuss about evolution before I get into the formal presentation, and then we'll go from there. But one more thing about evolution, and I'm not sure how this happened, but for some reason in the zeitgeist, it is commonly thought or said that DNA is the cause of evolution. And this is just not true. There is no scientist saying that. The people who discovered DNA didn't say that. Darwin didn't say that. No, as far as I know, there is no official source anywhere that is saying that DNA causes evolution. DNA is the product of evolution, and that's why they're correlated. But correlation is not causation. This is understood at a kindergarten level. And as far as I know, no scientist is actually saying that. But for some reason in the zeitgeist, this is commonly thought that DNA causes evolution. This is not true. And it is academically understood and known, it is academically accepted that the brain has known mechanisms for controlling DNA. And even in your everyday life, your DNA is not static. Things different switches turn on and off in your DNA all the time. And this mechanism is controlled by the brain. And often environmental factors are the reason for why this happens. So again, and another way, just like if you're just really thinking about it from a high level, you got to understand that there's so much infrastructure that's required in order to make DNA work in the first place. You need to have the histones to zip the file, because I look at DNA as being software. You need to have the histones to zip the file, and then you need to have a way of unraveling it. You need to have a way of splitting it. You need to have the transcription enzymes to transcribe the DNA. You need to have all the different proteins already there in order to even transcribe them in the first place. So there's and then so much more. In order to make DNA work, it needs all of these other things as well. And so in order of operations, DNA by itself doesn't do anything. There's no magic that happens with DNA by itself. And so in order of operations, you would need to have all of this other infrastructure available, or at least functional to some degree, before DNA becomes useful. So in terms of order of operations, DNA can't be at the front of the line. This is the software. Software doesn't come before the hardware. So this is a kind of, you can kind of understand this stuff at a pretty basic level. This is all commonly understood and all this stuff, but for some reason, there's just a different idea of how it works out there. So let's get into the presentation. So what I was doing at Arizona State University is I was working on computer vision applied to artificial intelligence in automated vehicles. And so I was trying to apply camera-based systems to automated vehicles. And one of the issues that I ran into in automated vehicles, especially at ASU, is that a overwhelming amount of investment and research and R&D effort, especially in academia, but also out in the real business world, has been dedicated to the task of making LiDAR part of the automated vehicle apparatus system. And what I'm going to be arguing in this presentation is that LiDAR is completely useless. It's actually, it makes your system worse, not better. And I want to be clear up front. LiDAR is a real technology, and it does have real world application. It's used in space, it's used to map layout. There are actual real functional purposes for LiDAR, But what I am going to hit hard on in this presentation is that LiDAR makes no sense at all in an automated vehicle. It doesn't matter what your philosophy is. There is no reason to have LiDAR in a vehicle. So automated vehicle. So let me, since maybe not everyone is familiar with how LiDAR works, just to set it up, the way that LiDAR works is, so the major companies that you may have seen that have LiDAR are Waymo is the big one in the US, and Waymo is owned by Google. And then in the past, there were other companies that have also used them. There was General Motors, GM, but they ended up having a problem a couple of years ago in California where they ended up using a LiDAR-based system, and this car dragged a person underneath their vehicle for like 20 or 30 feet. And so then they had to end basically operations. They were even caught lying, like trying to deceive about it too when they were doing it. It was all over the news. People probably remember. Another company that was doing it was Uber. And I live in Phoenix, Arizona. This is a heavy testing ground for automated vehicles. And the reason why Arizona is a heavy testing ground, or Phoenix specifically is a heavy testing ground for automated vehicles, is because we have 360 days of sunshine, and we have some of the widest and best roads in the US, because we have massive trucking that comes through here. And so and we have a very grid-like road system. Very squared grid-like road system, is very clean and organized. So we're pretty much ideal setup for this. And so Waymo eventually came here. And what they ended up doing is they ended up going to ASU, Waymo did, and they ended up investing a huge amount of money into their engineering department. And that was very problematic for me, which I didn't know about at the time, because I was going in there applying with this presentation for a PhD in computer vision to use it for automated vehicles. And so you'll see why this gets to be a big problem when you're in the hornet's nest with Waymo. So before I get to that, let's kind of build it all up and kind of set up what I'm talking about here. So again, my home base is perception. But, and by the way, if this math is scaring you, don't worry. I'm not going to get too math heavy. I'm breaking everything down. You don't need a degree to understand any of this stuff. But what is important here is that there are three major elements to automated vehicles for controlling automated vehicles. So the first element is perception, and then dynamics, and then control. And then basically what I have on this slide is intro to robotics. So this is the functional math for how you do robotics. And what I have here on the left side, this big old crazy looking equation, all this is saying is what is the least wrong answer. So based off of these three equations on the right side, the left side is trying to figure out what is the least wrong answer based off of that. And what you'll see is that perception, which is ZT, perception is used in all three equations, is fundamental to all three equations. So perception is the most important task in robotics, perception. So here are some of the major brands. So remember that this presentation was done in 2023. So some of this is a little bit dated, but almost all of it is still relevant today. This is a company called Argo on the top left here. This was owned by Ford. This is a now defunct company, but they were also trying to force fit LiDAR into their cars. They weren't able to do it, so they went bankrupt, or they closed down their company. But what I wanted to point out about this is that they have these LiDAR things on here, but notice the cameras that they used are Ring cameras, literal Ring cameras. And so you can tell that they went way out of their way to go all in on cameras, huh? Of course, Waymo's the big one. This company down here in the center is this should be Wave, if I recall correctly. It's been a little while since I've done this. And then there's a couple others. It's fine. There's a Chinese company over here called Xpeng, which people should know about if they care about this stuff. So LiDAR is so prevalent, and overwhelmingly so. Almost every major company has been trying to force fit LiDAR into their automated vehicle, and almost every single one of them is failing. The only one that is achieving scale, despite what narratives are, the only one that is achieving scale on the autonomous vehicles in this world is Tesla. And so Tesla is a camera-based system that does not use any other perception sensor, just cameras. And Waymo's use LiDAR and camera. So here's another thing about LiDAR. Even if you do use a LiDAR system, no matter what, you still need a camera-based system. Doesn't matter who you are, what philosophy you believe in, it doesn't matter anything, you still need a camera-based system. So I'm going to discuss why that's important, or why that is. This is like Chinese companies. I'm going to skip some of this stuff because this presentation is actually quite long. And so I'm going to skip it to condense it quite a lot and stick to really the most important points. So one of the issues is that LiDAR's got this spinny thing that's going around. You've probably seen it if you've seen a Waymo vehicle or something like that. Zoox, I've just seen in Las Vegas, has also started to deploy, which I believe is owned by Amazon. This is a relatively new addition, but again, still using LiDAR. And what a LiDAR system does is this little spinny thing that I'm talking about. It shoots a laser beam, and it shoots a ton of these all over the place. And then there's like, it's supposed to get a reflection back. This is an imperceptible beam of light, laser beam of light. And then based on that time and distance, they're able to get a point return of information on depth. So in other words, this laser beam's functional purpose and what it's doing is it's trying to measure depth of the things around it, the actual literal laser precise depth calculation. And it is laser precise. It is super precise depth calculation. But this is effectively the entire, in its entirety, the full and complete explanation of the functional purpose of why these LiDAR systems exist on these cars is for precise measurement of depth. But LiDAR is like a dumber version of sonar. And that's the way to think of it. And it creates a point cloud return kind of a grid around it in point cloud return. And I'm going to show videos and pictures and all this of that. But what I want to show first before I get into the videos of that is I want to show why a few different cases of why LiDAR doesn't make any sense in an automated vehicle. Why am I saying that so strongly? So this, what I have on the screen, and by the way, every slide should have a source on it. So like down here, this is the actual paper, academically accepted paper, and IEEE. The two major conferences I'm going to be talking about are IEEE and CVPR. IEEE is like basically the biggest engineering conference in the world, and CVPR is the largest computer vision conference in the world. So all of these papers and slides and presentations that I'm going to be talking about are all from the largest possible conferences, the most academically accepted conferences that there are in the world, not just in America, in the world. So this paper that I have on the screen is a little dated. It's from 2021, but this is considered originally the foundational paper on identifying what is known as VRUs. VRU stands for Vulnerable Road User, and this is a regulatory term, not an AI term. This is a regulatory term, and it is basically a catch-all phrase for pedestrians, dogs, cats, etc. And what this paper is showing is that at that time, it identified 32 attributes on identifying a pedestrian, which is like one of the most important tasks that a computer, any automated vehicle needs to do. And if you look at what these attributes are that they're talking about, like a handbag, clothes, and things like that, the bags that they're carrying, male, female. The issue with a point cloud return is that it only gives you the shape. It does not give you the color quality that you get from a camera. So LiDAR is like a one-dimensional point. It's just a point that tells you depth, and that's it. And you get a whole bunch of points, millions of points, and then hopefully you can identify the shape of an object with these points. That's what LiDAR does. Well, it turns out that if this is what you're prioritizing and this is what you're trying to maximize for, which is what a lot of pretty much all these LiDAR companies are doing, well, you miss out on all of those extra fine quality details that are actually most relevant. The most important aspect is this stuff, and this is academically understood. So this is in 2021, so this is dated. So this has actually been improved significantly since then. But this is just to say that this was known for like a long time in the industry. I'm gonna kind of skip this part and go to some more of the meat. So right here is something called, this is Argoverse, which is Argo, that company that was company that was owned by Ford, that was also trying to force fit lidar into their cars. They're now defunct, but in 2023 at CVPR, they presented this information that I'm showing on the screen. Now, one of the things that has happened in academia, and I'm pretty sure, at least as far as I'm aware to this day, is still true. One of the things that has happened in academia is that research around LiDAR degradation over range seems to be heavily suppressed. And before Argo went defunct, they published this, and this is, as far as I'm aware, the only major company that has ever published anything like this. What this is showing on the screen here is the accuracy on object and classification identification using LiDAR-based systems. So you can see in their best case scenario, they're getting about 51% accuracy at 0 to 50 meters of range. But once you go to 50 to 100 meters of range, it drops by half. And then once you go 100 to 150 meters of range, it drops by half again. So what this is showing is that it's showing a log2 degradation in accuracy every 50 meters using a LiDAR-based system. And I just did the math down here. This is some basic math. This is about as intense as the math is going to get. At 60 miles per hour, that's 26.82 meters per second. That means 50 meters of accurate range gives you 2 seconds of forecasting time. So you're able to see at 2 seconds of what ahead of you with this system at 60 miles per hour.
This completely takes automated trucking off of the board. You cannot have those type of tolerances if you're going to actually have a truck that's now commanded by a AI or whatever. It's just
no doubt about that. Yeah, that's why there isn't a LiDAR-based truck, as far as I'm aware. Not one that carries weight, but there is the Tesla Semi, which does exist and is on the roads and is working. And there are millions of vehicles, Tesla vehicles, automated vehicles on the road. In fact, I have one. Oh, I should also mention this. I've been beta testing the Tesla automated system since 2018. I have more than 100,000 miles driven on their system since then over multiple cars. And it's night and day comparatively to anything else that you can ever see. It's like ridiculous how much better it is. And again, Tesla has millions and millions of these vehicles on the road. And they're all over the country doing this, and actually elsewhere in the world. But Waymo only operates in geofenced spaces in a few select cities. They only have 2,000 vehicles in their fleet. And I'm going to get into more about all that, but that's worth keeping in your mind for now, and it's going to come up later again why that's relevant.
Something I did want to ask you though, like, what do you think about like LiDAR kind of being used on the ground to serve as like, I mean, they are even using that as a way of like kind of like a ground truthing for like these satellite images, like even on the pyramids or other stuff.
Oh, that's fine.
All right.
No, think about this, Nick. Nick, think about this. So they're only taking in one wavelength of light. So they don't know what the fuck anything is. It's just a distance. Exactly. They've only got one dimension of vision. It's worse than grayscale.
Yeah. And I'm setting up a few things here on purpose before I show you the video of what the LiDAR actually looks like, because I want you to kind of see how many different problem scenarios there are. And then when I show you the video, you'll have all the context you need for the video to make sense. So you're going to see that. Don't worry, it's coming. You're going to see how much of a difference there is between LiDAR and basically vision. It's like not even close. So what I was saying earlier, though, was that LiDAR-based systems require geofencing, meaning they have to map to a specific area, and they can only operate within this specific area, whatever this area block is, and they have to go through this area over and over and over again, and then they map it. It's effectively memorizing the area. And that's what geofencing is called. And that's what Waymo does. They don't operate everywhere in Phoenix. They operate within confined regions, and that's for a reason. And another thing about this is that that means that you're only allowed to do in that system, in a LiDAR-based system, you're only at this point, as far as I'm aware, and there's no technology that can beat this, you're only allowed to do point-to-point travel, specific point, predetermined, to specific point, predetermined. And this is different than, say, a Tesla, which can do anywhere to anywhere travel. And so that means you can start from anywhere, go to anywhere, whereas a Waymo has to start in predefined spots only and go to predefined spots only. And these are finite. It's not anywhere in that space. So even within the geofenced region, they can only go from specific place to specific place, not anywhere in between, and anywhere you want in there. And so one of the things that has happened, and one of the distortions that has happened, this is infected the regulatory space at a kindergarten level. This is broken. Somehow, some way, Waymo and other LiDAR companies have convinced everyone that point-to-point travel is more difficult than anywhere to anywhere travel. And to this day, these systems are still classified that way, where point-to-point travel, which is an ADS system in regulatory terms, is somehow, some way, from a regulatory perspective, it is somehow more difficult than anywhere to anywhere travel, which is an ADAS system. Sort of. I should be careful with saying ADS versus ADAS. Actually, let me come back to ADS versus ADAS later. But the point is that somehow they've convinced regulatory people that point-to-point is harder than anywhere to anywhere, when it's clearly the other way around, by far. It's exponentially more difficult to do anywhere to anywhere travel than point-to-point, especially when you're not confined by geofencing. One of the other things is that these systems, these LiDAR-based systems, are extremely expensive. Now, I'm sure the cost has come down over the past couple of years, but in 2023, the average cost on those Waymos for the LiDAR-based system, that apparatus that they put on there, that cost is $50,000 just for the system alone. Then you have to, at that time, roughly. Maybe it's come down a little, but it's still stupidly expensive. And then for whatever reason, they're putting these things on Jaguars. So that's another $80,000. So just between these two things alone, you have more than $120,000 being spent on these systems, 120, 130,000. And that's not including a safety driver. That's not including R&D. That's not including any kind of testing or anything. That's just the hardware alone with nothing else. No software is even put in there. No AI has even been put in there yet. So already this stuff is absurdly overpriced to begin with. Whereas the Tesla vehicles are $30,000, $40,000 by comparison, all in, with everything already done. And so the economics here is something that people need to understand, is that there is nothing, like the scale is not reasonably possible with a LiDAR-based system, because the expense on LiDAR-based systems, even after the costs have come down, is still absurd. By comparison, a camera costs about $100. The cameras that are on the Teslas that they've been doing for years and years, that do all this stuff anywhere to anywhere travel, just $100 each. So the cost difference is absurd. One of the other issues with geofencing is that if geofencing and basically memorizing the area means that you have to expect that the area is static, because as soon as the area changes in a material way, your training data goes out the window. And so construction becomes a problem, because these spaces will continuously change. So as soon as construction arrives, all your training data for that area is gone, and then you have to retrain with the construction there, and then as soon as the construction is done, the whole area changed again, and so you have to redo the training with new data all over again. So it is not easily adaptable. So one of the big problems with interacting in the real world is that it's an open set environment. What that means in mathematical terms, what that means is that there's infinite possibilities. So if you're trying to memorize an answer, which is what basically every LiDAR system is trying to do, if you memorize an answer, you cannot possibly memorize infinity. And the problem they're trying to solve is an open set problem, which means there's infinite possibilities. So you cannot memorize infinity. So you are destined to fail from the beginning if your system is dependent on geofencing or memorization, which is basically the same thing. So just to kind of demonstrate other issues that come up with LiDAR, this is an intersection in China. And if you look at this intersection in China, just look at the heavy complexity that's involved here. The pathing complexity, all the lanes, all the turning, all the different conditions that would be required, and the amount of traffic that you would have normally going through this, how intense it would be to navigate and manage all that. Well, this is yet another situation where LiDAR doesn't do shit for you. Nothing at all. LiDAR does not help you with this problem in any way, shape, or form. Exactly zero. It's useless. Doesn't do anything. Same thing is true in America. I was just showing this one because one of the issues is that you want to be able to generalize an answer. So if you try to train on just US infrastructure, then you're pigeonholing yourself to US infrastructure and you can't work anywhere else. And one of the things I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to model off the human brain. So we need to find a generalizable answer that works anywhere, regardless of where you are or situation. Here's another problem. You have all kinds of different signs, all kinds of different lights, and they're constantly evolving, and there's so many different versions of them, and they constantly change. And this is another situation where LiDAR doesn't do shit for you. Exactly zero. There's nothing about LiDAR that helps you with anything here on the screen. Zero. Exactly zero. So
how is this allowed on our streets? I mean, if it can't read a light, what the fuck are we doing letting it drive around?
Not a clue. I mean, I will make the argument for, I will a little bit later give the fundamental argument about why LiDAR is used, which is about depth perception. This is the fundamental functional purpose that LiDAR serves. But we need to get a little more evolved into this presentation before I really hit it. But the argument for LiDAR is it is accurate depth. And I'll get into that a little later. Let me kind of do all the setup for everyone because these are all going to be new concepts. So we're going to do this right. Let's put it that way. So as I was saying before, the primary issue is that we have an open set environment. If we're trying to interact in the universe, in the real world, then there's going to be an infinite number of things that can happen. So there are three major categories of problems. There are the known common problems that we always know about. That's this green bubble. Then there's the long tail known cases, the rare events, but we know about them. That's the blue circle. And then there is this much larger orange circle, which is the long tail unknown events, the unusual events that we don't know about, which is the actual larger set of problems, way larger than the other two. So just to give you some examples, at least once a year, in this top left photo, at least once a year, there might be a dinosaur crossing the road. And on the top right photo, you have a literal, I know it's kind of hard to see, sorry, it's small, but that's a literal plane on the road. And then you have a few other different issues here, like on the bottom, that, and we'll hit on a lot more of this stuff, but you can see how there's a lot of unusual things that happen. In fact, the number of weird things that can happen is probably way higher than you really are common. Like, even if you drive a lot, you'd be surprised how many weird things happen that you've probably personally never seen before. So in particular, what I want to highlight here is the center top video and the center bottom video. So in the center top video, you have a bunch of small mammals all over the road. In the center bottom video, you have like flying pages. Now, I was mentioning earlier that the way LiDAR works is that LiDAR tries to do object detection and classification by shape. So what really is problematic is if you're trying to classify by shape, what ends up happening is if you get this wrong, meaning you reverse these two scenarios. In the top scenario, you may go very cautiously because of these mammals. In the bottom scenario, you don't want to, you're on the highway on this scenario, you don't want to force the brake right away. You would actually go really aggressively because you would know that these are pages. However, if you're classifying by shape, you might reverse these two scenarios. And that's when the horrible stuff happens. And so this is another example where shape can easily be fooled, and where the qualia of color becomes very relevant and important. And in fact, not long ago, I think it was actually when we were at the conference, didn't Waymo run over a cat? And so, yeah. So, I mean, that also became really, I'm a big cat fan, so that really hurt. And of course, you have a lot of unusual scenarios. Top right is a bunch of.
What's the difference between a cat and a bag blowing in the wind? If a cat's at full sprint, how do you tell the difference in shape from that and maybe a bag that's now in the shape of a cat?
Yeah, you would be surprised at how much better computers are at computer vision than humans when you really want to. And one of the things that I'm not going to hit on it, but maybe it's worth mentioning since you asked, is that once you can do the visual spectrum, why can't you do everything else? There's nothing stopping you. And so that's exactly what the evolutionary path will look like when you get really advanced, is that once you can do wavelength light, there's nothing stopping. That's a very tiny, that's like the smallest sliver of the wavelengths available to you. Once you can do that, you can do all the other stuff. So just add infrared, for example, and you can automatically see through smoke. You can see through fog. You can see at night. You'll be able to do all kinds of stuff. So this is all, and it's all vision, not anything to do with LiDAR or anything like that.
Right.
And of course, you'll have some unusual situations, like in the far right scenario. That's a random washer rolling down the road. And so that can also be problematic. Sometimes you'll have trees that are in the middle of the road, like the bottom left. And then this situation I'm going to bring up now, discuss it a little more, but second from the bottom right, this is a trash can that's blowing from the wind through the road. Now, the reason why in AVs for a brief period of time, this scenario became complicated was because there's this thing called kinematic bits. These things, the kinematic bits is just motion bits, motion information, data about motion. And so people started training on kinematic bits in addition to the wavelength, light and stuff like that. And so what they did was they trained the system to be able to recognize every single trash can there is. And it did it. But one of the problems was that the training that they did was on trash cans that didn't move. And so when they deployed it, there was this trash can that started moving. And so it had kinematic bits. But every trash can it was trained on had no kinematic bits. So a trash can is not supposed to move. And so you can see how a detail like that will mess up the system. And so one of the things that's important is to understand where are all the advantages and the disadvantages. And kinematic bits are actually an advantage. You just need to make sure you train on them. And so this scenario that I'm talking about has already been figured out. Don't worry, this is long ago. So people have figured this dumb shit out. But we had to go through the evolutionary process. And I think in some of the systems that I've seen, because there's so many companies that are trying to do LiDAR at this point, and I see all kinds of horrible stuff. And I see a lot of cheats as well. And I'll talk a little bit about one of those cheats right now, which is a bounding box. So this is in computer vision, this is not a big deal, but in basically any other, any other modality, this bounding box problem I've seen is a big problem. And even in 2023, I was still seeing papers that were being submitted to CVPR or to IEEE that were using bounding boxes. Now, that paper that I was showing before about the pedestrians, the VRUs in 2021, I was saying that's a foundational paper, heavily cited, well understood, academic accepted, big deal. That paper also demonstrated that bounding boxes are a cheat. And what a bounding box is that not only do you need to be able to identify what an object is, but you also need to be able to position that object on the frame, be able to identify that position. And what a bounding box is basically a box that goes around the object you're trying to identify. And the issue with this is that a bounding box is going to always be larger than the actual object itself. And it's not going to be the shape of the object. The bounding box is just going to, like, for example, in this circle that you're seeing here, the bounding box in this example is way larger than the actual truck itself. But so you can see how much larger it is. So in the scenario like you have in the middle here with this overturned truck, if you imagine a bounding box with this kind of error rate on it in terms of the size of its shape and apply it to this truck, the bounding box is going to be bigger than the frame. Now, why that's important is that it's easier to see on this bottom left photo. Why that's important is because if you're using a bounding box and it's larger than the object, you can see that this bounding box on the side here, you can see here, this side here is covering up the road. So from the AI's perspective, there is no road to travel on. And so you'll see the AI system start to stutter here because it doesn't think there's actually anywhere to go, any room to go. And so it has no way of path projecting through a bounding box because you're not supposed to interact with this object. So this is why bounding boxes are a cheat. And this is still, as far as I know, this is still actually happening, unfortunately. In computer vision, I think AI specialists have figured this dumb shit out, but in everything else, I think they haven't. And this is a real shame. And I'll show you the solution to this problem, how you solve the bounding box problem. But I just want to bring it up right now that I've seen many LiDAR-based systems use this, and this is a cheat. This is a known cheat, and this is academically published as a cheat. And it's unfortunate that this thing is still happening. So here's the Waymo system on the right here, and you can see the little spinny thing. That's a LiDAR. And like I was saying, no matter what your philosophy is, you still need to have cameras anyway. And what this is doing is it's kind of showing the cleaning system that they're using. So this whole apparatus is being put on top of Jaguars in Phoenix and in LA, San Fran, and then maybe a couple other cities now. Austin, I think, also. And so so there's a couple major issues with this. So number one, there's a reason why we do wind tunnel testing. And so if you're putting all these LiDAR systems on it, and it's not just this little thing on top, it's also got LiDARs on the front, on the two corners, on the back and the two corners, I think on the center back as well. So you're increasing the amount of mass and you're increasing the amount of surface area on the exterior of the vehicle in order to do this. And there's a reason why we do wind tunnel testing. So if you do all this, you're going to basically invalidate all that, and this is going to affect your range efficiency. So you're going to have range problems as a result of this, and this is especially going to become a problem at speed. And so the higher speed you go, the more wind resistance you're going to get and the more problems you're going to have with range. Another issue with this, and what I was showing here with this video, is the cleaning system. And if you just apply one brain cell, another thing you can do is you can just take these cameras and put them behind the windshield. And then you don't ever have to do this dumb shit ever again. And then you can use the cabin features like the windshield wiper and the defrost settings that are already there. And you don't have to build anything new. And it only will cost you like a couple $100. And that's it. So that's the kind of dumb we're dealing with. So this is why I needed to do the setup for it before I get into the more complicated stuff, because I need to level set on what kind of level of dumb we're dealing with. So I'm going to skip this. This is called a distribution shift. I don't want to get too technical, but this is basically saying some stuff about time and how it's relevant. I want to point this company out just briefly. I'm not going to go deep into it, but I just so that people don't think I'm just promoting Tesla, whatever, and that's it. This is another company out of the UK. This is the company's name is Wayve, W-A-Y-V-E, and this is run by a guy named Alex Kendall. And they're trying to do a monocular-based system. So a monocular-based system is one camera. And they're using like other things like HD maps and probably a couple other things. But the point is their system is one camera. And that's all they're using. And this is based out of the UK, and they're trying to build it up. I don't think they're fully deployed yet, or at least not that I'm aware of. But what is important to understand here is that even with one camera, automated vehicles can be achieved. And they've done a really good job with this. Like I'm skipping a lot here, but like it's actually impressive what they're able to do with one camera and how many abstract ways that they've been able to improve on the system that are unconventional. And so the important aspect to understand here is that, again, a camera is $100. And this singular camera-based system is still capable of doing automated vehicles. And Waymo's spending $120,000 or $130,000 per vehicle to not really achieve that. So it's one thing for me to say that Waymo's messing up and stuff, but it's another thing to actually show the hardcore data on it. So I just want to bring this up real quick. Whoa, where'd it go? There it is. This is from the NHTSA.gov website. So this is official crash reporting data. This is a standing general order on crash reporting. You're required to report. And this is NHTSA.gov, as you can see at the top. And this is national reporting. So any automated vehicle that is operating on public roads, you're required to report if it's involved in a collision. And this is, again, national reporting. So I want to iterate again, Waymo only operates in geofence spaces within specific cities in the country, and that's it. Waymo, this data is being reported on the last reported on November 17, 2025. This is continuously updated every couple months, every few months. I've been following it since 2023. And Waymo has about 2,000 vehicles on the road. And you can see here, it's kind of tiny here. I'll read it for you. It's 1,426 collisions. So in their fleet of 2,000 vehicles across only a few different cities, they're reporting 1,426 collisions. Now, another thing to know about this, Waymo recently expanded to a couple new cities.
Jeez.
So that fleet of 2,000 vehicles is recently, increased recently. In May of this year, I saw they had 1,200 vehicles on the road, 1,400 vehicles, something like this. And they were reporting roughly 80% of their fleet has already been involved in a collision. And I've been watching this chart since 2023, and on average, it's 80%. And sometimes I've even seen more than 100%. In other words, on average, more than one collision per vehicle in their fleet on Waymo. Now let's compare. This is Tesla's collisions. Tesla has, I think, 5 million vehicles on the road with the ADAS system. Millions and millions of vehicles, and also around the world, not just in the United States. And they're reporting 2,000, I think that says 845 collisions with millions of vehicles on the road. So pretty large, massive magnitude of difference between the two. Now, the collision rate with Waymos is pretty insane. I mean, any other vehicle company that you've ever heard of having a 60, 80, 100% collision rate and still operating after all these years? I've never heard of one. But Waymo seems to be able to get away with it. And so one of the other issues here is that
I want to ask you, it might be a little too conspiratorial. I was wondering, do you think the LiDAR is maybe to actually map the area? Like it's an excuse. That's just one of the excuses. It's there.
There is actually that excuse that is made, and that is true.
I wonder if it's actually like collecting data, and you're thinking like, oh, it's on top of the car to help get it somewhere.
So actually, yeah. So this is actually true. So you're making a good point. There is actually a temporary use for LiDAR in automated vehicles, and this is known. So one of the, and I will get into it a little bit later, but one of the major issues is calculating depth. This is pretty much one of the big problems that needed to be solved in AVs is depth calculation. And one of the things that they learned is that no matter what your system is, even if you're using a computer vision only oriented system like Tesla, one of the things that they learned is that you can temporarily put a LiDAR system on the vehicle along with the vision, and as you're training the model, and you can map the area to measure depth calculations around you, and you can use that to help train the vision system on how to train depth. So, but then you would still take the LiDAR system off of after that. The only reason you would have it on is temporarily to get depth calculation, to get the system kickstarted into training. But then you would remove it later on and it would be able to calculate depth off of the vision system alone. Now, even this is not required anymore, but this is an argument that is made. This is sometimes done, and this is supposed to be temporary, but this is not what Waymo is doing. Waymo is making it, and they've multiple times said this in public and presentations, including their executives. They're all saying that LiDAR is here to stay for them, meaning that they're trying to make LiDAR a fundamental element of their solution. The fundamental element of their solution, which is nonsense, complete nonsense.
The final solution for the Silicon Valley Nazis.
Well, there's stuff there. It's important to understand that Waymo is owned by Google, and there are numerous incentives for doing this. Well, what I started off by saying was that when Waymo came to Phoenix, they went to ASU and they started dumping enormous amounts of money into the engineering department at ASU. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what ended up getting me basically in a lot of problems. And so when I was applying to my PhD at ASU, I was using this presentation. I presented this to all the lab directors at ASU in the Perception and Robotics group, which is a 5-floor building filled with PhDs. And basically none of them are working on computer vision. They had one robot arm with a single camera, and that was like their computer vision project. Everything else was LiDAR or LiDAR related technologies that they were working on. And in fact, I had to teach my professors all this stuff that I'm talking about. They had no clue about computer vision, even some of the basic stuff. At a certain point, it became completely pointless for me to even be at ASU, because not the professors, every single person in the perception and robotics group, not a single person at that time had a clue about anything I'm saying here. And it's, how do I say this? These problems are too dumb for somebody that has a PhD to not know about in AI, and let alone an entire university filled with PhDs not knowing a single clue about any of this. That's corruption. That's not a mistake. So earlier I was saying I wanted to do the setup so you can understand some of the issues that come with this. Now I'll show you what Waymo's LiDAR-based system actually sees. So here's a visual demonstration of what I'm talking about. So this is a point cloud representation of what the Waymo vehicle sees. You have the literal cameras on top, and then below it is what the LiDAR system is seeing, creating a point cloud return representation. This is what I'm showing on the bottom is what it means to have a point cloud return representation. And like you were saying earlier, it's just one-dimensional point of light. It's not even really the wavelength. It's just that one point, and that's it. Right. Let me play it again. So this is like a person walking across with a box. You can see the point cloud representation here. Again, these people moving this stuff, you can see it kind of misses the second person, it looks like, but it's very low quality, right? Like you would never trade the top for the bottom, right? No. But somehow they've convinced you that this is exactly what you should do. One more time, just to iterate the point. This is what a point cloud representation means. Now, remember this video, because I'm going to show you what you can do with computer vision. And anybody that understands video games and how video games work and all that stuff, you're about to have your mind blown, because it's exactly the same thing. So whatever you can do in video games, that's what you can do with computer vision, and you cannot do that dumb shit with LiDAR. Okay, this is, in my opinion, the most important slide, and this is the slide that got me in trouble. I know there's a lot on here. I'm going to break it down. It's not that hard, but this is really worth knowing. And in my opinion, like, I want to mention that there's a lot of things that I'm not saying. Some of it is to condense, but a lot of it is also to avoid creating even more problems for myself. I'm happy to talk about things if you want to, but I'm going to skip some of the really bad stuff that could get me in a lot of trouble. But this got me in enough trouble. What I have here on the screen, this got me in enough trouble. but I already did this, so I'll go ahead and talk about it. So this is the state. So if you ever see the phrase SOTA, SOTA, state of the art. SOTA is state of the art. So this is the state of the art Waymo leaderboard results on June 29th, 2023. Whoops. This was presented at CVPR 2023, the major computer vision conference by Chen Wu, who's for Waymo. I have the link here. And this is the paper that is associated with that presentation. On the left side, so this is the reference paper that I'm talking about on the left side here. On the left side, you have this table. This table represents what is industry standard for object classification around the world. Everyone in the world that is doing object identification and classification in AI, they all use MIOU, mean intersection over union, in this task. This is industry standard, not just in America, everywhere in the world. This is well understood, well known. This is standard. What MIOU is that there's a minimum. It's at the time it was a minimum 16 classes, but actually the number has increased significantly since then. I think in this case, Waymo was doing 22, which at the time in 2023 was acceptable to do 22 classes. Since then, this number has increased to even more classes. But just know, at the time, this is actually industry standard and accepted. You're going to have two sets of data here, validation set and the test set. The validation set is the performance of the model on the training data. And then the test set, which is the real measure of performance, the test set is on data after the model has been trained and is being tested on scenarios that it hasn't ever seen before. So on average, you would expect that the validation set would be, or I mean, the test set would be lower performance than the validation set. So that's supposed to be it. So it's all these different classes. They measure the performance on each one, and then they do an intersection over union on them. And then they average it. And that's what this table is saying. So what you're getting here is 46.82% accuracy on MIOU from Waymo at this one. And they presented this. This table was on the last page of their paper here, and it was not referenced in the paper. And this table was hidden at the very end, not talked about. Everything else on this slide is what Waymo is actually doing. This table is industry standard. Everything else is not. This is what Waymo's doing. So here we go. What you need to know is this. Look at this line that says SWFormer.3F hours, referring to Waymo. And then also down here, SWFormer 3F hours. These two lines are the lines you need to look at. What you'll see is they're showing the performance using this metric, AP, APH on pedestrians, for example. AP, APH, whatever the hell. This AP, APH metric is not MIOU, and I have never seen this metric before. So I had to go find it. What the hell is this AP, APH thing? They're showing on this, whatever this metric is, AP, APH, whatever the hell that means, this thing is showing an 82.9% accuracy rate up here, or maybe down here like 82.13 on the pedestrian, L1, whatever, AP, mean APH. So I went and looked for where the hell did this come from, and that's what's on the right. And it turns out this metric, AP, APH, it was also made by Waymo in a paper from 2019, which I'm showing here on the right side. And what this effectively does, this is the formula for it on the right side. Whoops. What this does is it takes this data on the left, runs it through this magic formula on the right, and outputs these results. That's literally what it does. I'm not exaggerating. That's what it does. It takes this data, runs it through that formula, manufactures this data. And as you can see, the performance that they're showing off of this metric, which is what they're using for their safety reports and what they published in their safety data in 2023 and 2024, this data here is almost double the performance of the industry standard. And they totally ignored the industry standard. 46% versus 82.9% or whatever on a metric that they invented. So let me make it clear here. Waymo invented the metric that nobody in the world uses, and then they use that metric for their safety data. And that metric that they invented is showing a performance that is nearly double the actual performance that is known as industry standard around the world. So this is important to know. Now, one other thing that I was saying earlier in a previous slide was the degradation of LiDAR over range. So what you're getting these point cloud returns. One of the things that happens is that the number of points that you get from the LiDAR system, the farther you go out, is lower. That's why the quality goes down. So when I was saying 50 meters, 100 meters, 150 meters, the Argoverse results were showing degradation at a log2 rate, half every 50 meters. This thing that I just described, this is called sparsity. In AI terms, this is referred to as sparsity. How sparse are the points? You want to have higher resolution data, more points. Well, the Argoverse results were showing degradation at range. And I was also stating that it seems like research on this specific topic about LiDAR degradation over range seems to be heavily suppressed because just can't find anyone really doing any serious research on it. And it's not, in my opinion, it's impossible that nobody thought about that for how prevalent and common and how many businesses, major multi-billion-dollar businesses, have been using LiDAR and failed. The graveyard of businesses that have tried to make LiDAR work and failed. There is no possible way that nobody thought about degradation of LiDAR over range. I promise you, this isn't like, from an engineering perspective, you have to be completely idiot. You have to be a complete idiot to not think about that. This is like, even in cameras, you think about, like, video games, you know about like how you have lower quality pixels further down you go. And in order to say, remember, you have to understand this stuff. It's like at an elementary level. There's no possible way people didn't think about that. So why is that important? I want to read this little thing that came from the paper. Some of the latest commercial LiDARs can sense up to 250 and 300 meters in all directions around the vehicle, leading to a large range of point clouds. Okay, so they're fully aware of how point clouds work, and they're talking about how a long-range LiDAR can go up to this range. But notice they don't tell you how sparse it is at that point. So let's go to this bottom right here. I'm going to read this. Our experiments are primarily based on the challenging Waymo open dataset. Okay, one thing to know about this Waymo open dataset. At the time that I published this, there were a total, which is November 2023. At the time I was publishing this, which is 4 or 5 months after CVPR, this CVPR, they had a total of 6 submissions to the Waymo open dataset. By comparison, NVIDIA on their data set had more than 400 submissions. And I'm bringing that up because the next line they say is, which has been adopted in many recent state-of-the-art 3D detection methods. As far as I'm aware, basically nobody in the world uses the Waymo open dataset other than Waymo. And even the submissions, the 6 submissions that I saw in November 2023, even those submissions were from nobodies. I've never heard of any of them. But on the NVIDIA data set, with more than 400, every major computer vision, every major university that competes in computer vision has competed there, including NVIDIA and all other major computer vision participants. It's like the standard, effectively. The data set contains 1,150 scenes split into 798 training, 202 validation, 150. Each scene has about 200 frames, where each frame captures the full 360 degrees around the ego vehicle. The data set has 1 long-range LiDAR, with the range capped at 75 meters, 4 near-range LiDAR, and 5 cameras. So it doesn't matter that the long-range LiDAR can sense up to 250 to 300 meters. They're capping it at 75. And this helps support what I was saying earlier and what Argoverse results were showing at the same time frame as this, that LiDAR degrades over range. And notice the 75-meter cap, just a little beyond the 50-meter degradation.
How much you would have bet that 75-meter cap that they're giving it is probably a way overestimation as well?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you're going to see some stuff. I'm just being a little, I'm not trying to be coy. I'm just being careful.
Like, yeah. They're overestimating even in that 75 meters. They would have gone higher if they could have.
Yeah, they would have gone high. There's almost, I mean, 75 meters at 60 miles an hour gives you less than 3 seconds of forecasting time, you know? So
Right.
that's still not much better, you know? So, let me talk a little bit. I mean, I'll skip all this technical stuff, but if anyone cares and wants to know about the architecture and how it really works with a camera-based system, this is actually a really useful slide. It pretty much lays out the actual architecture if anyone actually cares. But I'm going to try and skip all the really technical stuff. I do want to just mention something from this paper, which was a big deal. This is called OneFormer. This was a big deal in computer vision and all this stuff. The element here that I'm just going to briefly mention is that, as you would expect, it turns out that vision also improves large language models, semantics. And it's actually a two-way road. They kind of go hand in hand. But the point is that vision is an augment to an LLM. So another way of saying that is being able to see a red wagon allows you to be able to describe a red wagon in language better. And this OneFormer is kind of showing all that. Let me skip some of this stuff. This is technical stuff. It's kind of cool. It shows some really interesting things, but I kind of want to get away from it. Segment anything for anyone in computer vision is totally worth knowing. This was made by Meta, and when it came out, it was a big deal because it did object classification pretty robustly across a wide variety of topics, not just AVs, not just like useful in the AV industry, but useful across a variety of tasks. And it was a big deal. So this is where we'll get into the argument for depth and why LiDARs were adopted. So the primary and significant function that LiDAR provides AVs is a depth calculation. And the reason why this is completely useless, because number one, there's no reason to have super precise depth. There's no reason to have laser precision on depth. The argument went like this. The major problem in AVs is collision. And because LiDAR does accurate depth perception, highly accurate, this is how you avoid collision. This was the crux and fundamental purpose of the argument for LiDAR. But if you think about your human eyes and how you do it in real life, you're not trying to calculate the distance between you and an object in front of you. The only thing you care about when you in your everyday real life is you care about this object is in front of that object but behind that object. This is called relative distance. So this is how the brain does it. And this is actually the better way of doing it. It's way more efficient. So one of the reasons why we have binocular vision, two eyes, is because having two eyes, aka two cameras, is how our brain does depth perception on a relative basis. When you have two fixed points that you're using as a camera with known dimensions, you can create triangles off of this, and then everything becomes geometry. And that's it. You can even make up the number, like the actual real precise numbers don't even matter. You can be, as long as they're relatively correct, it doesn't actually matter what the numbers are. You can even make up numbers as you go. The only thing that matters is relative depth.
Look at insects. Look at the eyes on insects. Yeah. It's just massive eyes, just over and over again, just so that it has perfect, it's got depth perception and everything else.
Yeah.
all wired together with those eyes.
And you'll even notice that the eyes on, say, a fly, for example, are like, they look complicated, but they're actually just repeating the same thing over and over again, which is one fundamental concept. And what they care about, a fly cares about the most, is motion detection. And that's why the eyes bulge out and they can see behind them and all around. That's why they're globe shaped. And they're doing object detection. Motion detection. And that's the fundamental reason why it is. And you can even get hints of evolutionary progress. Sorry, you can get hints of evolutionary progress just by looking at the eye throughout all the species. The more evolved the eye, probably the more intelligent the species. If all the eye that some animal or whatever can do is do object or motion detection, then it's probably a primitive eye that probably has gray cylinders or something equivalent, right? Grayscale. But the more evolved the eye is, with more color perception and more qualia, then this is probably a more intelligent species. And one of the things that I'm not going to hit too hard on this, but one of the things I want to demonstrate is that consciousness is a gradient. One of the things is that there's not a real definition of consciousness. And why is it difficult to measure? It's because consciousness is a gradient. It's not like you just suddenly have a certain level that you hit and then all of a sudden you're conscious. No, consciousness is a gradient, and it goes from simple to complex, and it can get even more complex than we even are. So, I want to get to the real fun stuff. So, I was just talking about depth perception. So, and earlier I had mentioned that bounding boxes are a cheat. Well, this is the solution to those problems. Depth perception and bounding boxes are both solved by this. So in the AV industry, it has been completely adopted, including Waymo. Every single major company or philosophy, it doesn't matter what your belief system is, every participant in the AV industry has adopted this thing called an occupancy network. And this is one of two AI concepts that I'm going to be demonstrating. This is when earlier I was saying I was hoping to teach people what real AI is and distinguish that from fake AI. This is the one of the two things you need to know in order to understand what is real AI and what is not. An occupancy network is one, and the next thing I'll talk about is something called NERF. These two concepts you must know if you want to understand anything about AI going forward. And this is what distinguishes real AI from all the other junk. So an occupancy network, what it is it's a grid pattern that is made around the vehicle itself. And this grid pattern is filled with these Minecraft looking boxes all around it. And these Minecraft looking boxes, these boxes are called voxels. And these voxels are heat mapped all around the vehicle. So it's basically a grid, and then you put objects on this grid. And it doesn't matter the exact precise distance as long as you get it pixel correct. Whatever your pixel resolution is will be the resolution of your occupancy network. And these voxels, what is really simple and powerful about an occupancy network and why it was adopted by the industry is because it gives you a simple mechanism, a 0 and 1 binary mechanism for drive and not drive. So you can see here in blue, this blue area is where you can drive. And then everything else is no drive. Don't drive.
But if you're gonna relate this to a sense, it would have to be touch, right? Because each and every one of these things have different bumps and different layers. And so that as you're reaching out, you're touching these boxes, which is a generalized form, and you're getting the feel for it, how far or close it is. So it's a very tactile sense with this this form right here.
Good. So you're absolutely right. So eventually I'm going to show the evolution of this. So this is an old version. I know that it says 2023, but this is actually an old version of Tesla's occupancy network. I think this is the 2020 version, if I recall correctly. So this is an old version, and I'm just showing this to show you the evolution of what happened in the industry. The occupancy, because this is fundamentally important. An occupancy network, and you're right, you are going to get the texture qualia as a result of this. And there's actually a number of other benefits. But first and foremost, the thing to understand here is that the reason why this was adopted into the AV industry, no matter your philosophy, whether you're using LiDAR or not, it doesn't matter, you're still going to be doing this, is because it provided an automatic, implicit collision avoidance system. This, through software alone, this occupancy network automatically created a implicit collision avoidance system, and that alone was what was enabled it, which made it attractive to put into AVs. Now, there are many other benefits that I'm going to talk about that ended up happening, and this evolved even further. But important to understand here that basically think of Minecraft. You have a 0-1 mechanism for where you can drive and where not to drive. And in the in the 0 part, the part you don't drive, these little boxes, what they've done is they've added in a bunch of little data points. So they add further data into the not drive part, and then the drive part is basically the road. That's it, just the road. And that's simple, binary, and super powerful. And it turns out, and this is the solution to the bounding box problem. And I'm going to get into that. So the bounding box problem, I was saying, was a cheat. Oh, shit. I'm sorry. I need to talk about nerfs first. Pause on the bounding box problem. I need to talk about this first. I got it mixed up. So I was saying there are two things that we need to know in real AI. The occupancy network is one. And then the second thing you need to know, and this is as technical as I'm going to get, is nerfs. And now nerf, N-E-R-F, nerf, this thing was invented, this is a technology that was invented in 2019, I think, or 2018, 2019. And this stands for neural radiance field. And now if you play video games, you're going to have an advantage in understanding all this, because a neural radiance field is very similar in concept to ray tracing in a video game. And so what a radiance field is that it's the ray from a pixel on a frame. It's the ray vector that is pretty much identical to what ray tracing is in video games. And it's each pixel doing that ray tracing, and that's what a nerf is. That's originally what a nerf was. So nerf started out in 2019 as a new technology, and what happened is this thing that's called a radiance field, this nerf thing, it evolved into a whole branch of technologies. Now, this whole branch of technologies in AI is just collectively referred to as nerf, but they haven't since then they have made like thousands and thousands of different evolutions of this thing called nerf. Now, earlier I was showing the occupancy network is these like Minecraft looking boxes, voxels. What happened over time is that those voxels reduced in size over time and eventually became single points. And what you were able to do with that is you were able to make an occupancy network and a nerf effectively the same thing. So occupancy networks and nerfs initially started out as two independent, completely different things. And over time, they came together and became basically the same thing. So another way of understanding this is that ray tracing in video games and occupancy networks in AVs basically are the same thing. And so this is like, if you play video games, that should be nuts, because that means that everything that is happening in vehicles, in robotics, is a video game. It is like literally, it is that. It is not like that. It is that, equal to that. So these two things became the same thing. This is why I'm saying you need to know these two things. Not that you have to understand everything about it. You just need to know what this is, because this is real AI. And you're going to see what happens with this. So occupancy network. So nerf is a new concept, I'm sure, to people. So I'm just going to show like a few examples so that people get an understanding of what it is. So initially, nerf. So initially Nerf was slow, like all new things. But then eventually there was this paper that was called Planoxyls, and they figured out how to do it way faster, especially with GPUs. And you'll see in this video here the difference. So the left one is like what it was originally trying to do. This is what Nerf is originally trying to do. It's trying to render the object, but you can see that it was like slow and has some problems and has some difficulty. But then, of course, they basically sped this thing up like really fast. So what I'm going to eventually build up to is, can you do this in real time? Yes, you can. And so I'm going to build up to, yes, you can render NERF, aka occupancy network, in real time. If you're an AI person, this matters to you, because if you're in AV navigating through the world, it's one thing to be able to build the environment around you, but can you do it in real time, which is even harder, right? You have to do it fast. So can you do radiance fields, aka occupancy networks, in real time? The answer is going to be yes, and I'm going to demonstrate that. These are the results if you need to care about this. So let me show you one step of evolution. This is not the modern version of the occupancy network in the Tesla system. This is like, what, 2022? So this, you can see just in a couple of years how the evolution is. Higher resolution voxels, smaller voxels. And what you're getting here, you can see that this is still a 0-1 mechanism, just like I was saying before, for drive, no drive. But look at this. So these are the cameras on top, the literal cameras on top. And then this is what the car sees. So this is the evolution of the occupancy network over probably a couple of years. So a little bit higher resolution you're seeing. And you can see the car shapes are starting to become more defined. And remember how I was saying bounding boxes are a cheat? These little shapes right here, this is how you get around the bounding box problem. Once you apply them to a grid and you make the voxels as small as possible to individual points, then the task becomes getting the shapes pixel perfect. And you have a pixel perfect shape through an occupancy network for free. And still so many people are using bounding boxes, which is a total cheat.
This reminds me of Blender.
Blender?
Right?
Oh, yeah. Blender, yeah.
Right, the 3D modeling software. Like you could just plug this straight into there and have a total model of the entire place, and then I guess share it between different vehicles. Yeah. Isn't that what's also happening as well? Like there's a sharing between different vehicles with all these.
I think that, I mean, that's more theoretic. How do I say it? It's not commercially available. Like Teslas don't do it yet, but this is part of the plan that they're working on. Yeah, and yeah, that you can assume that that'll be obvious. Yeah, I would say that in terms of priorities, like what I'm talking about here, making this perfect, getting it exactly right is a way higher priority for everyone in the world. And that's what this is where we're at. We're still in the vacuum tube stage of AI. Everyone's thinking we're like, no, we're not. And I'm trying to show some of the evolution in the progress, because this is state-of-the-art stuff. And if you understand video games, you understand that we're still primitive, right? Like this is like not even 1990s graphics yet, right? So we're getting there. So as I was saying before, you get object shapes for free, and this is the solution to the bounding box problem. And this was a major problem in the industry, and still probably is for some dumb people. But this is how you solve it, and this is a really, really important thing. Getting object shapes for free, it's up there with collision avoidance in terms of importance. And this is like kind of important too, especially if you're an AI, you understand how significant this is. Probably most people won't understand how big of a deal this is, but this is one of the other things you get out of an occupancy network is that it reasons well within about occluded objects. So objects that are traveling behind other objects and partially occluded, this system inherently and automatically just understands that, because it's just a grid network around you. Very simple heat map. But again, as I was saying, the most important thing about the occupancy network for AVs is a collision avoidance system. It implicitly has this. Now, that is not to say that it will automatically go on the correct path. No, it just means it will consistently choose a collision avoidant path. So as you can see here, this car went out of control. It almost collided in the right corner, but the occupancy network avoided it, moved over to the left. This is clearly the wrong side of the road, but it avoided another collision and it stabilized. And that's the value originally. Initially, that was the major value, and it was sufficient to sell it into the AV industry just for this alone, because this is software alone doing this. I'm going to skip this because this is going to get really technical. AI people might care about the leaderboard results. I just want to point out we're in a competitive race. Thank God we have NVIDIA. That's the listing you see at the top on this leaderboard right here. But then you can see who all the competitors are and how many there are. In China, there are, at the time I was doing this, I'm sure it's way higher than this now, but at that time in 2023 in China, there were more than 160 electric vehicle manufacturers. I'm sure the number is way higher than that now, but there's more than 160 EV manufacturers in China. In academia, China, Taiwan, East Asia in general, they are super active and competitive on all of the leaderboards in AI, especially related to computer vision. Thank God we have NVIDIA. NVIDIA consistently is at the top of the leaderboards from America. And then there are basically nobody else in America. Literally nobody. It's just NVIDIA and then China, all the way down, effectively. That's what we're dealing with. And the reason for this is because of the massive overinvestment in LiDAR for decades. It's been more than a decade that this has happened. And this is, and like, I cannot stress enough how dumb LiDAR is in an AV system. It does not make any sense, and I have no idea how anyone rationalized it in the first place. This is a video game reference. I just wanted to show you what I meant by reducing the size of the voxels. So this is and this is done in real time. So again, I'm trying to demonstrate that this thing called an occupancy network and radiance fields, this can be rendered robustly in real time. And this is extremely important. And what you're looking at here, again, it's a video game reference, but what you're looking at here is you're seeing a depth calculation that is being done, and it's being color graded based off of that. So blue is farther away, and then yellow, red would be closer. So what you can see is that in video games, to save memory, they're trying to focus on the field of view, and they only render what's in your field of view and then ignore everything else. And then they render only what's in your field of view to save memory and compute. And this is really cool. And then this is kind of my home base, and this is kind of a lot of what I do or was doing. But they did even cooler stuff than this. They like even realized that they could they could increase voxel size really far out and save a lot of memory by not having to do as many points when you're really far away, and you don't lose anything by doing that. And you see this in video games too, where whenever you're some character looking over a long field of view, everything near you is high resolution. And then the further you go in the video, like look in the video game visually, it's lower quality resolution out there, further out, because you don't lose anything. And that's the same thing they're doing in AVs to save memory as well. And so this is a video game reference. Oh wait, are you talking? Sorry.
Sorry, I think you just described dreams.
Like actual dreams?
Think about it. It only renders in front of you, in front of your field of vision.
Yeah, that's actually so all
it's
of the
a lower
VR
resolution.
You're right. So one thing I skipped over in the neuroscience part is that our entire experience in reality happens in the hippocampus. And this is something that's important to understand, is that we experience the world through our senses. Yes, that's true. But in terms of the mapping, like everything that I'm showing you, what the car sees on the screen and creating that, we do that exact same thing in the brain, and it happens in the hippocampus. And so that virtual representation actually does happen in the brain too. And that's where we live. We live in here. That's everything in our universe happens right there, and that's our entire experience. So we're experiencing whatever our hippocampus recreates for us. So another thing that's important here, everyone probably knows by now that GPUs are in heavy demand, and they, for some reason, do a lot for AI. So that might be relevant. So what does GPU stand for? Graphics Processing Unit. And it's not just computer vision that GPUs do really well on. Any AI math just happens to be really efficient on a GPU, especially compared to a CPU.
Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's, I'll have to do a finance podcast in the future. Um, the the magnitude of difference between the performance on a GPU versus the performance on a CPU is massive. And so it's interesting that not only is the generalized math for a AI really powerful on specifically GPUs for some reason, graphics processing units, but this math that I'm talking about, point clouds, occupancy networks, ray tracing, radiance fields, neural NERF, all of that is extremely efficient on a GPU by comparison to a CPU. In fact, as you can see here, 1 billion points per second compared to 13 million points per second on a CPU. That's the magnitude of difference that we're talking about. Huge. And of course, this is all out, 2023 data, so way more powerful now. Everything I'm showing is accurate as of 2023 and has only gotten better since. Real-time rendering, I've kind of hit on it a lot. So another thing is, can it consistently be done robustly? And this paper, published by Meta National Taiwan University, which publishes such an absurd number of really good papers, Kaiser and University of Maryland. This is Robodyne, robust dynamic nerfs. And what they're showing here is that you can do all of this nerf stuff that I'm talking about very robustly and in real time. They're dislocating the camera. They're creating jitter and noise, or like zoom in and zoom out. They're changing your position. It still works incredibly well. What you're seeing on here, let's take probably the horse is the easiest one to understand. So on the bottom here, this is heat mapped, and it's heat mapped for depth, meaning red closer to you, blue farther for you. And what you can see with this horse is you can see in real time the depth calculation that is happening robustly. So remember what I was saying about the point clouds, and you saw what you saw from Waymo and all that? This is the depth calculation with a vision-based system on the horse. And you can see it starts out red, and as the horse goes further back, the depth calculation changes relative to the rest of the environment. And it does it in real time. It transitions cleanly. You've got someone doing a windmill, and you can see the depth calculation. You can see as the foot goes back or the leg goes back, the range goes further back. It can do it fast. It can do it at speed. It can do it in chaotic environments. So this is just a visual demonstration of how robust the depth calculation actually is, which was the strong point of why you would invest $50,000 in a LiDAR-based system over a $100 camera. Nope, you can do it. And again, who's published? Every paper I'm showing here, all academically accepted, all major publications, all considered major papers in academic world. So not a single paper here is anything controversial. Every single paper is academically accepted and understood at the highest level of regard.
And fully in production.
And fully in production, and in a variety of ways. Yeah, absolutely. All this stuff is well known, especially in East Asia. The amount of, like, people are so brainwashed about China here. The propaganda is so absurd. If you guys saw the AI that's happening in China, we would look like an idiot. We do look like complete idiots compared to China right now, and East Asia, Taiwan especially. So I'm going to, this is a more modern version. This is not the most modern, but this is modern roughly in 2023. And this is the Tesla's occupancy network. And you can, again, compared to the point cloud representation you get from LiDAR, look at the level of detail that you're getting on the Tesla-based system. This is in real time. This is not a camera overlay. This is what the car sees and reconstructing in real time on board. This is the occupancy network. Now there's a speaker that's talking on this, and he's turning things on and off so that you can see the various details. But look at the quality and resolution of the points, and there's so many of them. It looks like it's more dense to me than the one that Waymo was showing at the very same time, at the very same conference. It's worth seeing this one again. Now, this is even more. There's even more advancement that has already been made, and so this is not the modern version. But in 2023, you can see like just how much of a difference this is, and it's impressive, and it's like a video game. I mean, anyone that's done video games knows that this is pretty much a video game. So I want to read this slide because the conclusion slide is written exactly right. And then I got one more major thing after this, and then we can go into discussion. But I'm just going to read this real quick. It appears that all major AV industry participants on any modality all over the world are converging to three things. Still true to this day, but this was what I was showing in 2023. Occupancy equals point clouds equals radiance fields equals VR representation. These are all exactly the same thing. They're all the same thing, and all augmented by semantics, meaning words help, LLMs help, but they're LLM is an augment, not the foundation. Number two, perception accuracy is increasingly measured by how correctly perception recreates reality in virtual space. And number three, the task of AV perception has become building a localized digital twin of the real local environment in real time. That's what the task of perception in robotics basically has become. So feature-rich representation is best. What this means is high-resolution data is better. And you got to understand, I had to explain that to a whole room full of PhDs, that higher resolution data is better. An entire room of PhDs I had to explain that to at ASU. The perception task has complexity proportional to the maximum perceivable radial distance from ego and the minimum required length of this radius increases with speed. What this is saying is the faster you go, the farther down you need to see. But the slower you go, you don't necessarily need to see as far. And the complexity of this whole VR representation task is determined by the radial length, the minimum required radius, and that complexity increases the faster you go. And so if you're going fast, the complexity is not growing linearly, it's growing squared. And that's relevant if you were hearing what I was saying about LiDAR degradation over range and the forecasting window.
It's true for humans too.
It's true for humans too, exactly. Number three, recreating the world as humans see it requires perception systems to see real photons the way humans see them. And I should have mentioned this earlier. The road systems are designed for vision, not LiDAR. The road engineers have designed roads for vision, not LiDAR. This is the level of dumb we're dealing with. PhDs don't mean anything. This is the level of dumb we're dealing with.
There's very little braille on the roads, but if there was, I'm sure we'd have a lot more blind people driving.
I'm sure. So I conclude. Success on the perception task converges to real-time virtual rendering of localized reality as humans perceive it, and because of the nature in which humans perceive reality, mimicked real perception must at least be inferred from real photons. Again, I have to make the fundamental argument that reality is perceived from real photons and not fake photons, which is what LiDAR is. Real photons is vision, actual reality. Fake photons is LiDAR. So I have one more thing, and this is what really ties it all together. So this is the actual formal end of the presentation, but I want to show this because this, in my opinion, if you've been paying it, if you made it this far, this is the honeypot at the end. This is a foundational paper in computer vision. This is one of the most referenced papers in computer vision, one of the most popular papers in computer vision, and considered maybe up there with one of the most important papers ever in computer vision. Academically recognized, widely accepted and understood, and everything all around the world, thousands and thousands of times, maybe tens of thousands of times. This specific paper has been referenced. This is a paper, it's called The Unreasonable Effectiveness of Deep Features as a Perceptual Metric. This was published by OpenAI and Adobe Research in 2018, back when Elon was still there at OpenAI. If you don't mind, I'm just going to read the conclusion as is because it's pretty profound. Our result. So this is a paper about computer vision, and it explores the reason why color is important. That's why this is such a famous paper. Our results indicate that networks trained to solve challenging visual prediction and modeling tasks end up learning a representation of the world that correlates well with perceptual judgments. A similar story has recently emerged in the representation learning literature. Networks trained on self-supervised and unsupervised objectives end up learning a representation that is also effective at semantic tasks. Earlier, I was saying being able to see a red wagon, allows you in language to be able to describe a red wagon better. That's what this is saying. Interestingly, recent findings in neuroscience make much the same point. Representations trained on computer vision tasks also end up being effective models of neural activity in macaque visual cortex. Macaque is a type of monkey that has a brain very similar to the human. So this is important because this is the first thing that says computer vision and the visual cortex might be related. Moreover, and roughly speaking, the stronger the representation is at the computer vision task, the stronger it is a model of cortical activity. Our paper makes a similar finding. The stronger a feature set is at classification and detection, the stronger it is as a model of perceptual similarity judgments, as suggested in Table 4. Together, these results suggest that a good feature is a good feature. Features that are good at semantic tasks are also good at self-supervised and unsupervised tasks, and also provide good models of both human perceptual behavior and macaque neural activity. This last point aligns with the rational analysis explanation of visual cognition, suggesting that the idiosyncrasies of biological perception arise as a consequence of a rational agent attempting to solve natural tasks. This is their way of saying artificial intelligence needs to exist in the real world and understand the real world. And that is what is being found that computer vision is enabling us to do. And on top of that, just happens to be that when you do that in AI, comprehend the real world through vision, you end up mimicking the brain. Whether you know it or not, it ends up becoming the brain.
Bingo.
Further refining the degree to which this is true is an important question for future research. So again, the human brain is computer vision is, when you do it correctly, it literally mimics the brain. This is important to understand. There's all kinds of ridiculous shit that I've heard about the brain and the concept of consciousness. It's quantum and microtubules and pulling in consciousness from the ether and all this shit. No, every single thing, 100% of everything we know in the universe is mathematical. 100% of everything we know in the universe is mathematical. The brain is mathematical. And computer vision experts implicitly understand the visual cortex in the brain, whether they know it or not, because the visual cortex is doing a step-by-step function from V1 through V6 in the visual cortex. This is a step-by-step sequential function, and people in computer vision are doing exactly those steps. Without even knowing it, they're mimicking the brain. I actually have no idea why there's some giant wall between neuroscience and computer vision, but computer vision people probably understand the brain better than most people without even knowing it.
I would agree, because the first things that all life had to figure out was the world around them. And all intelligence is built off of that same basic premise every single time. It's how do you relate to the world around you?
Correct.
That includes light and all the rest, any sort of sensory impulse, any kind of information.
Yep. So that's actually what that paper is saying, is that a rational agent, whatever that is, so you can either be a conscious human or a AI, something, any AI. It turns out that a rational agent that successfully interacts in the real world is doing is going to end up making neural activity in the brain. And by the way, I just want to make sure that I distinguish that this is not saying that computer vision becomes human. This is saying that computer vision becomes the brain. And that's a big difference. So everything in this world, all life in this world, is going to have some variation of the brain. And we know that different animals and different species, all up and down the animal kingdom, they all have varying different kinds of success at perceiving the world. For example, bats, they have eyes. Anyone ever wonder why bats have eyes when they don't really use them? And so one of the things is that the eye evolved first, and then bats literally got stuck in a cave. And when they got stuck in a cave, they had to switch to echolocation. And so the value of the eye went down. And then they evolutionary prioritized sonar. But one of the issues is that they have problems with reflective and smooth surfaces. And they have all kinds of issues. And that's why they got forever stuck in a cave. They're literally stuck in a cave now because they went from vision to prioritizing audio, sonar. So, so you can see how, and that they have issues with flying near mirrors. If they end up flying towards a mirror, they'll end up running into it. Windows are a problem. That's why birds sometimes have problems and stuff. Like they don't understand glare that well. The glare isn't a concept in sonar. So you would be surprised at how many, like you can probably see glare on my glasses. So that's how you know that there's, right? You can see like that kind of stuff. That's like obvious. You don't even think about it, but you got to understand a bat has no concept of this. And so you can see how all these different qualia, subtle qualia of color and texture, all these subtleties are complicated and are lost when you don't have vision, but create massive exponential benefit when you do. So the really big important thing about that's going on in the world right now is the energy consumption that is being used for AI, and it's going to grow exponentially. I wanted to show this graph. This is for a presentation from Ray Kurzweil, the guy who predicted the singularity. If you've ever heard of it, if you've ever heard of the word singularity, it comes from this guy, Ray Kurzweil, and he has this chart. And I just wanted to show this chart briefly, just so people can understand what is happening with compute. So this is a log 10 scale. That means it's increasing by a multiple of 10 every step up. So even though this line looks roughly linear, this is actually an exponential graph because it's going up in factors of 10. So what you're seeing towards the end here is you're seeing the beginning of what is called an S curve. And this is an exponential curve in compute. So there was this thing called Moore's law, and Moore's law had been in effect for a very long time. And what it states is that compute was expected to double every 2 years, roughly. And that comes from the size of the transistor. So in other words, they were expecting to be able to cut the size of the transistor by half every 2 years. So that means on the same amount of space, you fit about double the number of transistors, so you double your compute. That was the simple logic that was used, and that's what Moore's law is. Since then, because of this guy named Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, CEO of NVIDIA, he's been doing this GPU thing, and he's been blowing Moore's law out of the water consistently every year for like decades. And so now it's like way the hell blown out, and you're seeing an exponential curve starting right at the tail end there. And this is going to keep going because GPUs do all these tasks that I've been talking about in this presentation way better than any CPU or anything like that. And he's just crushing it. He's like at this point, Moore's law is completely blown out of water, obliterated. I think if I recall correctly, the math on his rate of growth in compute is something around 1.7x per year, compared to 2x every 2 years. So that's probably conservative. He's probably going to go faster than that. So, and that's important because it's not related to the size of the transistor anymore. So there's a lot of like horrible stuff that has happened in AI, and just like every other subject, like AI, of course, is ripe for all kinds of distortion and abuse. And after I gave this presentation at ASU, so many horrible things happened to me. It's kind of hard to talk a lot about it because there are a lot of problems with talking about it, but just know it was really bad. What I can talk about though is there was this OpenAI whistleblower in November of 2024 that was assassinated in California. And I think more people should watch this. I hope people do. But basically, there was a government operation that was run on me, totally illegal and all this stuff, and it was pretty horrible. And it seems to resemble a lot of elements of MK Ultra, and it's very similar to what I've heard veterans about UAP that are UAP whistleblowers talk about happens to them. But it seems to be that being a whistleblower is the fastest way to get yourself killed in America today. And this just keeps happening. And I really want to bring up this guy because this guy was doing something very important at that time. And he ended up dying in November of 2024. And this was around when a lot of the same stuff was happening to me and many others. And I'm bringing this up because it's just important to understand that there have been, like, everyone is aware of all the public assassinations that are happening and all this stuff, but less people are aware of how many assassinations and how much corruption is happening in academia. Just last month, another MIT professor who was working on clean energy was just murdered. And this is consistent. If you know about Bob Lazar, you know about what happened to him in academia. If you know about Nikola Tesla, you know what happened to him in all this stuff. Over and over again, in America specifically, people who find things in academia or elsewhere are often just killed for whatever reason. And it's not just one subject. It is all across academia, across all of the STEM subjects. Anything in STEM, this is where you end up getting, if you figure something out by accident, you still get a lot of horrible stuff happens to you. And so I wanted to bring this up because I've personally seen this happen. I've been subjected to it by the US military, and I've seen many other people in academia that it's happened to, and in AI. And on top of that, this appears to be almost identical to what UAP whistleblowers, like veterans from the military who have talked about UAPs, it seems almost identical to what they say happens to them. It's almost verbatim. When I watch them all, they're all saying the same MK Ultra stuff is happening to them. And it's really horrible because I've seen it happen personally. And you would be surprised. They don't do just one thing to you. They do thousands and thousands of things to you continuously. different things nonstop. They have control of every device in your life. They have control of a huge number of people all around you. They will manufacture your environment. They will artificially manufacture every kind of accident imaginable. They will artificially manufacture the people in your life. You can't trust anyone because they're always doing it. And this is an absurd number of resources that they invest in this task. And this is an absurd amount of taxpayer dollars that are going specifically to the task of the US military murdering and harming Americans on American soil. And this is extremely important for people to know. Every single person in America needs to understand for 80 plus years, the active elements of the US military are actively harming people in America, Americans on American soil who do these things to try and figure anything out. And it happens so frequently and so commonly. And I know it's not just academia and veterans. I've heard of it happening in a variety of other subjects, all kinds of assassinations. People forget like how, well, I shouldn't get into that, but people forget like how many assassinations have been happening, and those are just the public ones, and you don't even know about all the ones that you don't know who they are, and there are so many. So I hope that there are other people that you guys can find that have been suppressed in academia and retaliated against. And it's so consistent, this pattern of behavior. Even doctors, especially during COVID, over and over again, we're talking about massive amounts of retaliation for telling the truth about anything. In medicine, they've been heavily oppressed. Doctors have lost control of medicine. Like doctors don't do medicine, insurance does. Insurance is basically dictating your medical care, not the doctors. The doctors don't have a choice. They're stuck in the system.
Ashish, I had a horrible thought earlier. I thought, what if it's the insurance industry that's actually behind this whole LiDAR scam because they don't want collisions on anybody's record. So it's the collisions that's leading them on this, whole, insurance perspective of the universe.
I can address that. Computer vision. When you have a camera-based system, something else that you get for free that you don't get with a LiDAR system is that you get a dash cam for free. And so I actually have on video recording, like I was saying that one of the things that they end up doing to you is a form of like the government attacking you is that they try to artificially manufacture a lot of accidents. So in 2024, there were a lot of like new close calls, unreasonably, statistically impossible. Like just over and over again, how many different accidents I almost got into and had to avoid. And I even have them on video. And like you could just see, I have multiple camera angles, and even after they missed me because I avoided it, they tried to hit me again. And like it's like ridiculous how many things have happened. But anyway, to answer your question, you get a dash cam for free, so insurance companies would care. And I actually, what I had proposed at ASU is I had actually proposed a black box option with cameras, like a similar thing that they do in airlines. A part of my PhD was not like a small part of my PhD was also proposing this because it's so cheap. You can have flash memory, like it's so cheap. Like $100 has the whole system for you. Like that's it. Yeah, and it would be a black box. It would be small, very fast. You could do it on flash memory, so it would happen instantly, even with a collision. Yeah, not bad. Cameras have so many different advantages that are not really like. First of all, in my opinion, we should standardize on video data. It is high resolution data. So of all the data that you could have, video data, high quality, high resolution video data is the most data valuable. Or sorry, most valuable data. Sorry, most valuable data is the high resolution data. So we should standardize on video data. And one of the things that is advantageous from a business perspective about standardizing on video data is that let's say there's a regulatory problem and you have to like submit the records like the black box or whatever. Well, video data is common and uniform. So there's no proprietary thing in cameras. Like there's no proprietary thing in like a video. So no business will ever have to worry about giving away a trade secret if they gave away the raw video footage, because that's not where any of the trade secrets happen. All the trade secrets happen on the back end with all the software. So standardizing on video data means that you can offer that data with no harm to your personal proprietary IP. You're just giving the raw video footage, which is universal. And
Right.
that's not something you can say with LiDAR. You would end up having to give away some proprietary information with LiDAR data if you gave it away. Yeah.
Interesting point, though.
Yeah, and there's more to it. Yeah, but that's the big stuff, guys. Like computer vision's where real AI is. It's not LLMs or ChatGPT or whatever. Yeah.
I had an interesting thought while you were describing the bats. So, have you ever read the book The Time Machine by H.G. Wells?
Oh yeah, definitely. Uh-huh.
So you've got the Morlocks and the Eloi, right? And the Morlocks are underground and they're kind of blind. They're, their eyes have degraded, but they've got a great sense of smell and they can smell other people. And it's like you're dealing with the Morlocks. In a lot of ways, they're sort of blind to what's right in front of them, if they just open their eyes, but they've got so much invested at this point, they can't even see the forest for the trees. So it really is fitting that it's all about sensory data. And these people are so fucking blind.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a mistake, guys. Like, you got to understand, nobody is this dumb. It is not possible to be in a room full of PhDs that are all collectively a room full of PhDs are not that dumb. This is happening on purpose. This is intentional. This is mostly a money game, and that's why it's happening. It's really mostly about money, yeah. The other thing to kind of know, again, from the neuroscience side, so this is a little bit morbid, but it makes a point that is valid. What is understood is that brain dead equals dead. This is understood in neurology. Brain dead equals dead. Any other part of the body, you're still alive for some time if you lose it. But brain dead equals dead. So again, I was saying I've heard all kinds of dumb shit about consciousness. Everything in this, 100% of everything we know in this universe is math. So far, 100% of everything we know in this universe is math. So all of the consciousness aspects happen in the brain. I'm sure, like, don't get me wrong, your body in its entirety is a perception sensor. The whole body is a perception sensor, and that is relevant to the brain. But in terms of your actual consciousness, where does it actually happen? It's in the brain. It is a mathematical concept, and computer vision is showing that they already understand this. And that for some reason, there's just a big wall between what is already published and understood in computer vision for many years, but for some reason, neuroscience isn't picking it up.
One thing I did want to ask you about, kind of going back, I guess, to like the stuff that was happening to you. You were talking about ASU, right? That's where you were at. Isn't like the DOD and the Department of Energy, and doesn't like the military actually like fund projects at that place too?
Yeah, I was in one.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, yeah. So, in my undergrad, my computer science undergrad at ASU, I had to like do a capstone project. So how all of this happened was there was this guy. Before I say his name, let me just look something up. I just need to make sure that I can say this real quick. Yeah. So I needed to do a capstone project, and at the time, the CIA was at ASU, and they were so the capstone project in computer science at ASU, you have to do something for a real organization or business in the real world, and there are a number of projects that you can apply to do your capstone project. And one segment of those projects that was available to do was working for the CIA, and I was doing something called making a digital twin, which sounds more than it really is. It's not that big of a deal. This part is not really that big of a deal. But the point is, initially, for my undergrad, I built this little digital twin project, which is not a big deal, for the CIA. And my project manager at the time, his name was John Lewis. And at the time, he was the CTO of the CIA. After I did that project, coincidentally, John Lewis retired out of the CIA, moved from Washington, D.C. to Phoenix, Arizona. And in 2023, he started teaching a class at ASU, which I took. As I started doing this AI thing in 2023, so that happened. Another thing that happened was that two people moved in right next door to me. One of them was a former 75th Ranger with a Q clearance. And then the other one was a former US Air Force officer turned DoD contractor at Booz Allen. And if you can believe it, so they told me that this DoD contractor, her name was Mickey Adachi, and the former 75th Ranger was Francisco Salcedo. So they befriended me, and this is all, they moved in right next door to me, literally next door to me, all around the same time. All this is happening at the same time. John Lewis from the CIA moving, and me taking his class, and he being my project manager. I should also mention this while I'm doing this. At the beginning, I didn't say this, but my project advisor for this project that I was doing here, this is Dr. Kidambi. This is also a NHTSA engineer, National Highway and Transport Safety Association. So he was my project advisor, and he's fully aware of everything I said here, including the Waymo stuff. So this is, again, and I have the date on the slides here when all this is happening. So if you can believe it, so they told me, this DoD purchaser, her name's Mickey Adachi for Booz Allen. They told me at that time she was purchasing LiDAR-based systems for the US Navy. And if you can believe it, as dumb as LiDAR is on vehicles, on cars, it's even dumber, even more dumb to do it on a ship. LiDAR offers nothing of value at all on a ship. There's no reason to do it. So these people moved in next door to me. They befriended me, and they started asking me a lot of stuff. And then after I gave this presentation at ASU, lots of horrible stuff happened to me. And I've been put under surveillance. As far as I know, I'm still under surveillance, but they started hiding it. At first, they don't even hide, by the way. When they put you under massive amounts of surveillance, which is an absurd number of people that they put on you to surveil you, they don't just put like one or two people on you. They like follow, like I have a crowd of people following me around, and they change out all the time. I went to the Grand Canyon out in the middle of nowhere just to see what would happen, and they don't hide. Like the point is to make sure that you know that they're there, because what they do to you, and part of the MK Ultra part is that they try to make you go psychotic, literally. If they can't get you to commit suicide, they'll try to make you go psychotic. And they also do this through a variety of methods in intelligence, but they also do it with drugs. They do a variety of different things. And the idea is to, one of the things they do is they try to manufacture as many catastrophes in your life as possible. Because the idea is to make you, like, if they can't get you to go put you in a psych ward, which thankfully I have a lot of medical experience, and so I could handle what they were doing to me. But at the same time, if they fail at that, then they just try to get you to commit suicide by making your life as horrible as possible. I've applied to more than 200 jobs over the past 2 years, and I haven't been able to get one interview. And prior to that, I was able to get an interview at almost every job that I ever applied for. And I have like really good resume. I'm not saying I'm the best, but for sure in the top 50%. And somehow I was the person, maybe the only person, that got a computer science degree, and my employability went down instead of up. And so that's pretty ridiculous. And they do a lot more horrible things than that to you. They manufacture all kinds of horrible shit. They have access to every single device that you ever have. It doesn't matter what. And they will do all, like one of the things they do, like I'm uniquely trained on being able to distinguish between algorithmic behavior and real behavior. And like I like thank God, because they do all kinds of algorithmic stuff. They have access to every kind of app you might have, any kind of audio. I couldn't listen to music anymore because one of the things they do
Uh,
is they
Ashish,
inject subtext into audio.
Benford's law. Do you use Benford's law to do analysis of the type of numbers that keep popping up?
Well, I'm not familiar.
Oh, Bedford's law is a mathematical tool that they use to determine whether or not it's a made up number or a natural number based upon the probability of the numbers in different positions. So, like a one is more common than a nine, so you're going to have ones pop up way more often. And so, based off of those probabilities, you can tell whether or not a person's going to be lying about a number or not. If you apply Benford's law, you can actually see whether or not you're getting outside influences.
Oh, I'll have to look up at that. I mean, I know of a similar concept in cryptography. One of the earliest forms of decryption, like breaking encryption, like early on. This is nothing advanced, but way early on, one of the first things they would do is they would do statistical analysis on the letters, and then they would match it to the language, the occurrence in the language. And so they would just look at the statistical analysis of how often something appears, and then they would look at it in the language, what is the occurrence, and they would see if they match, and then they would translate that way. So that was actually one of the early things that they would do, which is a similar concept to what you're saying. No, I haven't done that, but I mean, I don't need to. Like I said, for the most part, they don't even really try to hide anything. Like the issue that they go for is that if you even try to talk about it, then they'll use it as evidence of psychosis, and then but like in the military, like the military has reduced the clinical definition of psychosis to whether or not they agree with you.
Yes.
And UAP,
It's
like
always been
every
that.
single person in the military that has ever talked about aliens, basically, I mean, except for David Fravor, I guess, was the one person I've heard that doesn't get retaliated against. But almost everyone else, all the other military people that have talked about aliens or said anything about it, have discussed massive amounts of retaliation and fears for their life and fears for their family and all this stuff. And they have to go through rigorous psych and all kinds of stuff like that. The math says the probability aliens exist is 100%. Yet every single person in the military that ever talks about aliens somehow needs a psych exam over and over again. And it's like they're not really doing a psych exam. They're doing MK Ultra over and over and over again. Just like I was saying in academia, people who talk about aliens end up getting put in a psych ward. The clinical definition in medicine for psychosis has nothing to do with whether or not you believe in aliens. You can talk about aliens all day, every day, and be totally wrong about it. You're still not psychotic. It has no relevance to the clinical definition of psychosis. Yet in the military, it does. And that tells you everything you need to know for the past 80 years, what is happening. That is only one thing that they've weaponized in medicine is psychosis. They've actually weaponized everything. And of course, like just to say it, I don't have any brain disease. I never have. My dad's a neurologist and a psychiatrist. My mom's a pharmacist with a bunch of degrees. I have a bunch of degrees. I know what I'm talking about.
Right. It seems like the retaliation industry in the United States is actually like a huge thing. It's like it's being subcontracted out. Not, all these people aren't state employees, but basically you can hire a bunch of people to go out and just harass and mess with people, and it's perfectly legal.
People for hire. The cost of treason in America is near zero. That's why they're doing it so regularly. It's a regular and common thing. The number I've seen from Kash Patel last month, produced by Kash Patel, the FBI director, he said in the last few years, more than 270,000 Americans have been surveilled. That's in the last few years alone, and that number is a gross underestimate. I know for a fact it's way higher than that. So this is a big problem. Yeah. Over and over again, so many people are getting murdered for this stuff, and hopefully it doesn't happen to me, but we'll see.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that because there was like people that we covered. Well, I didn't cover technically. Lisa covered on Lady Burger Lake with Smiley Face Killers, where a lot of these kids that were showing up dead are like attached to like people that are associated with the government in like weird fucking shit like this.
Mm-hmm.
You
I mean,
almost
we
saw
know about the Tuskegee experiment.
kids get knocked off to tell them to shut up or some shit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know all of like every single kid, but I am aware that kids are not immune from the corruption that is happening with the U.S. military. There's so many people that talk about corruption in politics. I don't understand why people don't talk about corruption in the military, because that's a way more dangerous game. Corruption in politics is almost exclusively a money game, but corruption in the military is about power and control. And
Right.
you got to understand, like, Americans really need to understand how frequent, common, regular that the US military is weaponized against Americans on US soil. If you don't believe this, look at the Twitter files. This is a massive psyop. It's extremely dense evidence of this. Extremely dense. And that's just one thing. That's just one thing. Nothing about the COVID era makes any sense. Not a single thing about it makes any sense. All the doctors that were talking about the truth were retaliated against heavily. All kinds of suppression and control. We've seen it in Europe. We know that they're controlling free speech, and you go to prison for it. It's ridiculous how much has been compromised in America. Yeah, and this is active sabotage.
All of the viruses that were created for and by the government. Right? I mean, none of this stuff was independent. All of the genetic material came out of Fort Detrick and was used in the private sector. All of this stuff was originally a military project.
Yeah, I mean, MK Ultra was a military project. Intelligence, but when I say military, I'm including intelligence. By the way, intelligence is the apparatus through which a lot of this happens. Like during the Edward Snowden era, there was a U.S. court that ruled that the NSA was illegal, and that court ruling still holds to this day. There is not one person at the NSA that is not fully and completely aware that they are working for a criminal organization whose primary function, the reason why the NSA even exists in the first place, is primarily to commit treason against Americans on American soil. It is literally built for that purpose. It is the functional reason why it exists, and a U.S. court is it's still illegal, but it's one of those laws that we just pretend doesn't exist.
There's a lot of those.
There's a lot of them. Every single amendment in the Constitution has been violated for this purpose, including enslavement, by the way. But yeah, this is what I'm trying. Like, it's really important that Americans understand that the U.S. military is not really defending them over the past few years. Like the line is, by the way, I'm not trying to. I understand that there are good people in the military, but I'm just talking about the math alone, the numbers. The primary line for the U.S. military is to defend from threats, foreign and domestic. But there were, over the last few years, we are seeing over and over again, every country has had free reign in America with impunity. So what threat were they protecting us against while they were surveilling 270,000 Americans, which is a gross underestimate of the real number. That's just what the FBI is willing to say.
It seems like any level of organization, more than a church group, is able to infiltrate and, basically take over government organizations. And we have no.
There was a military coup. I mean, Eisenhower warned about the. Excuse me, sorry. Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex. I was mentioning that my neighbor, Mickey Adachi, was a Booz Allen DoD contractor at the time that was purchasing LiDAR systems. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, at a fundamental level, it doesn't make any sense. Especially when there's millions of Teslas on the road doing more than what any of the military vehicles can do. And by the way, I learned in the process of them running this operation on me, I learned through what they were doing to me. Just so you know, I learned through what they were doing to me what their capabilities are, and you wouldn't believe how primitive it actually is. They're doing the dumbest shit you could imagine. You think that they have like super advanced AI robots that are indistinguishable from humans. You think they have like advanced super tech. You see all this shit about them being like they have whole star fleets that are like operating in other galaxies and shit. You see so much of this dumb shit. No, they don't. They're really dumb,
Okay.
actually.
Here's a new proposition. So you were talking about all of the scientists who have died, all of the inventors who have died. What if that's because these other people were so far behind them that they couldn't let anybody else get in front of them? So we keep thinking it's because they have something hidden that they're trying to keep from the public. What if it's just trying to stop somebody from growing a better garden?
Yeah, that's called sabotage. What?
Right.
Americans trying to make their lives better is somehow worthy of killing them? That's not. Yeah. I mean, what you're saying is exactly what they're doing, though. So we are facing something called a knowledge deletion campaign. So hopefully what you got out of this presentation, or people got out of this presentation, is that the real version of AI is actually really cool. But all these apocalypse scenarios and all this stuff, the way that happens is with dumb humans. The apocalypse scenarios happens with dumb humans. You don't need to fear artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is math. That's it. It's just math. You're blaming the gun and not the human. The actual real problem is artificially dumb humans. And we are being manufactured in America and in the West to be artificially dumb. If you've seen what they're doing in archaeology, which we've talked about and a lot of you are familiar with, if you've seen that they're hiding all life in the universe, UAPs, which are common, if you've seen what I'm talking about in AI, we have multiple vectors of knowing that we are being made artificially dumb. We're all the amount of knowledge that we have is this big, and the amount of knowledge of discoveries already made and suppressed is much larger than the amount of knowledge that we have, that the governments are drip feeding to us. So there are discoveries that have been made all the time, like way back in the Nikola Tesla date. We had Nikola Tesla. They were trying to hide electromagnetism. This is part of how we get to the propulsion tech with UAPs, because they're based on principles of electromagnetism, and we know this. And Bob Lazar talks a lot about this, that they were trying to hide all of these principles. Anything related to energy, high energy production, anything related to the propulsion tech, that's what they were initially trying to hide. And then that expanded to basically all of academia. And now everything in academia is classified automatically first. Everything. Reality is classified. The entire classification system is being used as a weapon against Americans in order to hide all these activities. And that's the purpose of classification, classifying everything, classifying literally everything. And by the way, classifying everything, that's actually understood. They will admit that. Everything is by default classified first, and then not classified if they ever get around to it, which they never do.
Well, not for the important shit.
Yeah, which is almost all of it. Like most of it. What they're declassifying is not really that important. Yeah. And it's not just a propulsion tech. It's not just energy. It's across the board in all of academia. Across the board. It's, prioritizing STEM. That's what I would know about. I don't know about outside of STEM. I'm sure they're doing a lot there. I know about stuff that they do in finance, and obviously all the corruption happens in finance. Actually, my background's in finance, and I've got to probably at this point do another talk about finance in the future. But I just want to put this on the screen for people to see. And I hope people bookmark this website. This is usjetclock.org. And what you need to understand about this is we have $38.6 trillion in debt. We make about $5.3 trillion in revenue. We spend $2 trillion on Medicare. These are the top 4 line items in the federal budget. We spend $2 trillion on Medicare. We spend 1.6 on Social Security, about a trillion on military, and more than that, more than what we spend on the military, about $1 trillion on interest from our $38.6 trillion in debt. More than what we spend on the military every year is how much we're paying in just interest alone. Nothing else, interest alone. Interest is the third largest line item in the federal budget behind Medicare and Social Security. Interest. So when we have a huge amount of fraud happening on the order of trillions of dollars in sum total, and your taxpayer dollars are going towards weaponizing taxpayer funded assets against Americans, and most of this $1 trillion that's spent on the military doesn't go towards defending Americans, and a huge amount of it goes towards harming them. There's nothing about this that is like, first of all, mutually assured destruction is literally spells mad, and it's the dumbest thing. The idea of being that for the past 80 years, one of the highest priorities of the US military has been to enable and create every system possible to destroy the world in 5 minutes or less. And they've done it. And that's what mutually assured destruction was about. Philosophically, that's what it was about. And once they created it, they told you they weren't going to use it. But they created it and kept building it more and more and more. And there's even people, like, just so you have some understanding of how they do this, there are people in the military who go into these hundreds of underground bunkers, like little bunkers. And in there, they have like 2 people in each little room. And they spend maybe sometimes up to years in this little underground thing with no windows, and there's one other person with them at their little post where they're at. And what they're doing in this little bunker is they have a little machine, and they have a signal that comes in, message or whatever, and then they're supposed to do something if they receive that. And they do this across hundreds of different ones. And this is how nuclear launch codes are sent. And they do this regularly because they're conditioning them to do it without question. So they send tons and tons of fake ones through to make sure that you're doing it, and they make sure you do it over and over again, but most of them are fake. But then the idea is that when one that is real comes through, you won't know which bunker it is, and you won't know if it's a real one or a fake one. When you see the signal, you're supposed to do your task, and that's what launches the thing, and you won't even know where it's going, what it does, or if it's even real or not. And this is how they condition you in the military to just launch nuclear, because one of the things they would be concerned about is this idea of like a noble person that would stop, oh no, we should not launch the nukes. They're worried about that. So this is their method of getting around that. And every day they send these things all the way through, and when everyone comes, they have to be there to like do the thing to launch them and whatever, pretend to launch them. They have most of the time they're not, right? Yeah. So that's kind of like, you got to understand, this is what our tax dollars are going towards. They're not going towards helping you in any way. They're literally being weaponized against you to make you dumber. We are actively, this is what the point of making all this distortion in academia is about. It's designed specifically for the task of making the population dumber, not keep them where they're at. They go back in time, they rewrite history or delete it. And this has happened actively. You were mentioning gain of function research initially is what you were talking about when you were saying stuff about that. People forget. This was on the news and commonly understood, and now it's been wiped. In the 1990s, there was a lab that was off the coast of, I think it was Virginia, but it might have been Maryland. I can't remember. It was on an island. And this lab was doing gain of function research in the 1990s on the Ebola virus. And they were trying to make the Ebola virus airborne. They were trying to make it a respiratory disease. And they succeeded. And what ended up happening is that this actually got into the vents of the lab, and there was a whole bunch of monkeys in this lab, and they all got infected. And in the 1990s, this was during the Clinton era, they had to send in a whole team to destroy this lab and completely obliterate it. And at the time, the way that you had dealt with Ebola is that you burned everything, including the people, and then you poured Clorox in a moat around it, and then made sure that and then buried all of that. And that's how you dealt with Ebola at the time. And then the United States made an airborne version of it and succeeded in the 1990s. That's called gain of function research. And that is because once that gets out, there's no borders on that. If that even got out one time, if that was ever deployed even one time, there's nothing that stops that from infecting the whole world. And there's nothing that stops it on the local border either or anything like that. There's nothing you're going to do about it. It's done. You're done. once it goes airborne like that. So that's the kind of shit that your tax dollars are going towards. And such an enormous amount of money and resources in this country is dedicated to specifically the task of harming humans. Again, to this day, intelligence is not part of the definition of life for some reason. To this day.
That's pretty evident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just look at the news.
We have a lot to really figure out in this country. That's for sure. Because China is not this dumb. I promise you they're not. Like, on multiple levels. I worked in Hong Kong for a short time when I was working for a hedge fund. And I promise you, they're not this dumb. They had robots all over the place in 2010. They were thinking about this stuff way in advance. They've deployed robots all over Asia. Everyone that looked at China or Japan knows this. China's even better. So if you think Japan is advanced and the stuff that you see there looks super advanced, well, just see, you guys got to look at what they're doing in China. Don't believe the propaganda. They are way more advanced than we are. They're doing stuff that we can't do.
Well, one of the things I like to look at is sort of like this holistic look at how different energies affect different societies. And if you look at the ancient, decrepit energy of our Congress, right? It shows you exactly where their sort of like energetic field is. It's sort of old, decaying, it's crumbling, and it refuses to get out of the way for new energy to come in. Right. This is sort of like the case all across the country is these old, decrepit, dinosaurs who couldn't manage anything. I mean, they were all puppets to begin with, are now trying to hold on to power as they slip into the void because they're so corrupt. There's no way that they could leave any of their empire to anybody else as if they would want to in the first place. They hate everybody.
I mean, once people get power, it often corrupts. We've heard that this is what happens all the time with power. Is corruption.
Right. It's a lifestyle for them. They don't even think about the power. Like wielding power is just a lifestyle choice for them.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can have a discussion about that, but I kind of want to go even higher level than that and talk about what the net result is present day as a result. So this is more in the finance, and I'll use this is kind of where I'll end off, but I kind of want to mention this because it's, in my opinion, this is what another one of those things that every American needs to know about. So one of the things that has happened as a result of whatever sabotage happened in America, this whole thing for many, many years, this has extreme consequences, and they've already happened. And I want to just briefly mention why this is important and relevant for every single American to understand. So here's what happened as a result of all the sabotage. I know we're talking about fraud in the news right now and money game. These are all money games. I'm talking about real danger. Power and control is the type of corruption that happens in the military. And I want to say what is the real danger for that kind of corruption. Money corruption is one type. This is a different type, more dangerous. So what happened over the last many years? I know we're talking a lot about China and stuff, but I think people have not really looked at what China is actually doing. More than 80% of Australia, more than 80% of Australia is mining country.
Right.
Almost all of the population lives on the East Coast within 200 miles. The rest of Australia is divided into 4 sections, like a cartel, literally a square block divided into 4 sections. And this is all mining country. And there is a Congo line of barges going from Australia to Southeast Asia, nonstop. The Congo line is so large that it's visible with the human eye from space. That's how large the Congo line of ships, of barges filled with mining ore from Australia is, going to Southeast Asia every day. Something else that is not understood. China owns 97% of the known rare earth metal deposits on Earth. All of them. 97%. If you understand technology, you understand how important rare earths are to technology. The rest of the world is fighting for those 3%. Similar action to what I just described in Australia is also happening in South America with China doing that. Do you remember those Somali pirates?
Yes, sir.
That problem was solved by China.
Right.
China has military bases all down the east coast of Africa. And they're also learning Mandarin as their first language now in a lot of these places in East Africa. Another thing that is well known is the new Silk Road that China built through the Mideast. There's a new Silk Road. So everyone's concerned that China is about to take over Taiwan. But I want everyone in America to understand something. India is the largest by population democracy in the world. 1.4 billion people. They pride themselves in calling themselves the largest democracy in the world. India is also surrounded by Chinese military power on all sides for thousands of miles in every single direction. There is not one direction around India that is not surrounded by Chinese military power for thousands of miles deep. Every other country in Asia is aligned with China, including Russia, because we put all those sanctions on them. And Russia is selling all of their oil because nobody in the West is allowed to buy it. So they just sell it to China. And if you understand anything about the US dollar being the reserve currency of the world and how so much of that power comes from pricing oil in USD, if you understand that, then you also understand the significance of more oil in the world being priced in yuan and not in USD. And that is cheap oil. Every other country in this block is aligned with China for thousands of miles. And so is Africa, and Australia may say they're not, but functionally they are by the numbers. They are. I understand politically they're not, but functionally, because 80% of Australia is mining, it all is just going to China. So
Monopsony. It's the
I'm
sole
sorry.
consumer. A
Yeah,
monopsony is a
exactly.
sole consumer. So that's a
Yeah.
perfect example right there.
So while all this sabotage was happening in America, nobody understood anything about what China was doing in the world. And everyone in America got really focused on Taiwan, which I'm not saying is not important. They're really advanced and they're super important for semiconductors and all this stuff. But this is the largest population democracy in the world. And when you start adding it all up, how much land mass on Earth does China already present day control? And how much population on Earth does China already past tense control? It turns out when you add it all up, that percentage of land mass on Earth and that percentage of population, once you include what'll end up happening to India, no matter what at this point, that's more than 50% of the planet right there alone. And nobody has a clue about any of this that's going on. And I promise you, even in the military and intelligence, until 2024, they probably didn't know either. Because like I said, when they were running the operation on me, I started figuring out what their capabilities are. And it turns out they're really dumb. They're dumber than you think. They're doing the dumbest shit you can imagine. So one of the problems is that India doesn't have any real way to get to the West. I mean, I'm Indian, by the way. I've been to India many times. India loves America. They want to be American. They wave American flags. They celebrate 4th of July. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, this is the largest democracy in the world, 1.4 billion people, and it is surrounded by China in every direction for thousands of miles. Not one person in America knows anything about this dumb shit. That's how when I said that we are being programmed to be artificially dumb in America, I really mean it. This is an actual thing. It's a real thing. It's an intentional thing. It is that. This is reality. This is base reality. I promise you, I'm the only person living in reality right now. This is what's happening, and no one knows anything about it. And this is how much of the planet China has conquered without firing one bullet. Not one bullet. They've already achieved this, and they don't have to do anything in military conflict to achieve it. And I'm talking about past tense. This is already done. This has already happened. All that needs to happen is India just needs to trade with China primarily, settle everything in yuan, and then nothing else matters ever again with the US dollar. And
Right.
India has every reason to do it and no reason not to. Because
Japan has already indicated that they might be more friendly towards China now. I mean, this is after one of these dominoes falls, the other ones are going to fall too.
Yeah, South Korea is also trying to do a lot of shipbuilding for America and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, they're trying because they don't want to be conquered effectively, but it's already too late, and people are going to start seeing this.
Everybody, including Americans, are sick and tired of American rule. They're just really bad managers in Washington, D.C., and that's really
the stereotype that the stereotypes Americans have had around the world outside of the country, like the rest of the world, how the rest of the world perceives America and other countries for the last 20 years is the dumb American.
Yeah, comical.
It is the most common description across the world, numerous countries, of what their perception is of Americans. When they come to those countries, they think of them stereotypically as dumb Americans. This is what the stereotype has been all around the world for the last 20 years, roughly, close to it. So this is why all this shit matters, because China is graduating 300,000 world-class engineers every single year. World-class. And when I was at ASU, they were making every engineer as dumb as possible. I had to explain to a room full of PhDs in computer science that higher resolution data is better. Do you need a degree to understand that or not? And you think I have to explain that shit to anyone in China? They're teaching AI to elementary school in China. Elementary school is learning AI in China today. That's already happened. Past tense again. So this is what it means to be artificially dumb. I'm not saying that Americans are dumb. I'm saying that we've been programmed to be artificially dumb. And that is the problem. You need to fear artificially dumb humans more than you fear artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is math. You don't need to fear intelligence. It's the dumb you have to fear. We have this concept in Hindi that, I mean, if I've said a lot of heavy shit, so let me try some less heavy shit. Everyone has heard this word Buddha, an enlightened one, right? But there's always this heavy distortion or difficulty in understanding what does Buddha mean. So maybe a better way of understanding this is through its opposite. We have another word in Hindi. It is called Buddhu. Same word with a U at the end. Buddha and Buddhu. Buddhu is the polar opposite of Buddha. Buddhu is the definition. The definition of this word is like a dim idiot. That's what a Buddhu is. A dim person, very slow idiot. That's what Buddhu is. So if you don't understand what Buddha is, which is not your fault, they've distorted everything about this, then you can just learn what Buddha is by knowing what it's not. And Buddha is the polar opposite of Buddhu. So don't be Buddhu. That'll just get you to Buddha right there. You'll become Buddha that fast. Just don't be Buddhu. You don't have to know what Buddha is. Just be not Buddhu.
So how do we get around the stupidity though? I mean, is there a cure for this kind of
I've been trying to do shit about this for a long time, but my whole give a fuck has completely out the window because of how much horrible shit has happened to me and how often I've been hearing about it happening to other people. Like the fundamental problem is not foreign threats, although there is that problem. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but the existential threat that America has is sabotage, is treason. Our U.S. military has been weaponized against Americans on American soil for 80 years. There was a military coup that happened during the Eisenhower era and was the military solidified their power with the Kennedy assassination. And they've been using all kinds of rationality and justification for why it's appropriate to weaponize the military against America. And when I say military, I'm including intelligence. I'm mostly referring to intelligence, not soldiers on the ground fighting the war, like not like that. I'm mostly referring to psyops and intelligence and special ops, certain special ops, especially the
Well,
ones
think
that
about
I've
all the experimentation. All the experimentation since the 1950s, it's just been nonstop. And I think that includes COVID. That was military experimentation. They look at us like cattle. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, Americans are definitely considered sacrificial, and they're allowed to be sacrificed. I mean, if you want to hear one of the darkest chapters in history, you got to look at the polio vaccine. That'll tell you everything you need to know. But that's another one of the things. I mean, you got to look at that whole era. The 60s era was just the things we publicly, academically understand. There was the food pyramid. There was lead-based paint. There was sugar trying to blame saturated fats. There was thank you for smoking. There was the JFK assassination. There was the moon landing. There was did I say the food pyramid already? Yeah, there was that. I mentioned the polio vaccine. All of these deceptions, unleaded gas, the gas think tanks and all that, they all happened in this same time frame. All these different deceptions, they were all happening at the same time. And there were so many people being assassinated, including JFK. Not just JFK, but that's the big one. And that tells you how much, like, you have to understand that military has a monopoly on violence. And we're so desensitized to people getting murdered in America. Like, it is happening nonstop. And it's not just about murder is one thing, but like also just destroying people's lives, like Bob Lazar and the stuff that they did to him. Like, this is so common and regular that this is why everything that I just showed on this screen and everything I'm talking about, this is why it happened. It's not like there is a foreign threat that is doing all this to us for the last 80 years. No, this is our own people doing it to us. It's called friendly fire.
Well, if you look at the other countries that are as influenced, if not more influenced by our deep state than we are, you look at Mexico and you see that, what was it, like 30 of the other presidential candidates were all murked the same election cycle. Mm-hmm. So it's not just us, it's our influence everywhere. It makes people stupid, and it ups the ante when it comes to
publicly known that it's publicly known that the CIA did 2 military coups in Ukraine, and that's why we're in this war. 2 back-to-back coups in Ukraine, and that's what happened when they destabilized the country because we destroyed their elections. And that was the United States doing that, and that's publicly known. We know that that's how this all happened.
Right.
Damn.
And of course, that's not the only country we've done coups in. We do coups all over the place, including our own country.
Yeah, there's been a couple. Didn't we go to the Philippines and basically like take their leader out and just install our own handpicked one?
A couple of times.
It seems like what we're doing in Venezuela right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just fucking crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So once I just kind of want to finish this point with India is that I wish more people knew about India. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm Indian, but it's because there's so much that India had to offer, and the West would have benefited so much from Indian talent, and we never made it so that we had any real significant trade relations with India that would matter enough. And now the only answer and most logical answer for India and everyone else in Asia really is to align with China. because America is still acting like a complete idiot, and the rest of the world can't wait around anymore. And so it's been 5 years, 6 years, going on 6 years of idiocy that America is just completely incompetent about, and the rest of this world is like trying to figure out what to do. You know, another thing about Ukraine that everyone needs to know, because we talk about in archaeology, there's this channel called Land of Chem for Egypt, who has done a lot of really good work in Egypt and documenting stuff. And he documents that the Haber-Bosch process is likely happening in one of the pyramids, which is the chemical process on how we make fertilizer. And this is extremely important because this was invented in the past, I think, 100 or 150 years, and that was what allowed us to feed the world. Without the Haber-Bosch process, we wouldn't be able to feed the world. We wouldn't have enough fertilizer. Well, what people don't know about Ukraine is that most of the fertilizer in the world comes from Ukraine. Specifically, it comes from the Donbass region. And everyone at this point needs to know about the Donbass region, which is somewhere, if I recall correctly, around here, somewhere. And the Donbass region, like I said, is where most of the fertilizer in the world comes from. So the World Health Organization reported when this war started, we impacted food supply all around the world. This has happened during the COVID era, and this is part of why the prices of food went through the roof. Because at that time, when that war started, the Donbass region was immediately put into conflict. And the World Health Organization reported that starvation after that increased by 400 million people that year. The world starvation rate increased by 400 million people when this war started and put the Donbass region into conflict. This is another thing that Americans don't understand about war. So that's not 400 million people in Ukraine. That's 400 million people in the world that are starving because of that war, just that year alone. So that's what happens when you create conflict and don't have a fucking clue what you're doing, which is currently the status of America and their military and intelligence. So they staged 2 coups in that country, started this war, and then put the global food supply into jeopardy because there wasn't enough fertilizer and 400 million people starved in that year because of this.
Yeah. And the world's largest ecological intentional disaster when they blew up the pipeline.
And there was also that too, yeah. And I mean, yeah. And so we blew up the pipeline as well, and that also stopped energy and made energy prices volatile. So food prices are volatile, energy prices are volatile, and inflation went through the roof, way higher than what the government's telling you it was in that era. Inflation was about 20 to 25%. This is understood by people in finance in reality, but this is not what is stated publicly. Because if you mess this up, if you have an inflation number that is wrong, all your money will go away. You will lose it. So people in finance care. So they have to know what real inflation is, despite the propaganda of the government, which was saying it was somewhere between 6% or 9%. No. Anybody that was doing 6% inflation, thinking it was 6% inflation in finance, that you lost money. No, you didn't. If you were doing 20% inflation, 25% inflation, and you were able to beat that metric, then you were making money in that era. Yeah. So all of that is happening at the same time. Inflation on the US dollar, energy destabilized, food destabilized. All the same, and then war.
Inflation actually makes you dumber too. So if you think about it, over time, because of inflation, you're going to use cheaper and cheaper materials, which is going to take away a lot of the artistic flair that you would have had with that other stuff before. So this is why you've got all of these buildings in middle America that look fantastic and out of like storybooks and stuff, and they don't build that anymore. It's because inflation has made people dumber.
I have to do a podcast on finance. It'll be a whole subject, but something to understand. 100% of currencies over the past 100 years, every single currency over the past 100 years, including the US dollar, every single one has inflated 99% or more. and many collapsed, of course, over that time. So again, every single currency in the world, bar none, including the US dollar, over the past 100 years, has lost 99% of its value or more. Every single one. And yeah,
That's right.
there's nothing you can do. The damage is already done. And so that's the really sad part. So earlier I was saying my give a fucks are gone because it's too late. It's just fucking too late. There's a consequences to being dumb, and this is what it is. So here we are.
Damn right.
Yeah.
All right. You got anything? You're pretty much done now at this point, right? I think.
Yeah, I'm done.
All
Let's see
right.
if someone comes to kill me.
No, you. Like fuck.
It doesn't even matter if they take Taiwan. Like it makes no difference whether or not they invade because they already own the entire planet. Why would they even need Taiwan?
They were never going to invade Taiwan. That was a distraction.
Exactly.
What I was saying, they were never going to invade Taiwan. Yeah.
They'll keep saying it for the next 20 years, though.
What China is actually doing and what they've actually been doing for the last 20 years is what I said. This is what China's been doing. They want India, Taiwan. They already control Taiwan. They don't need it. They don't need to invade it. There's nothing to gain there for them. They own 97% of the rare earths on Earth. They have all the mining. They have all the manufacturing. They have more advanced tech than us now, and they're not dumb. They keep building nonstop, like most advanced shit ever. That you should see the buildings there. You should see their drone fleets. Like their drone performances are incredible. You should see the new cities that they're building all over the place. I think they have 10 cities with 30 million people or more. And they're super advanced. I've lived in Hong Kong. I've been to China. I've been to Shanghai. I've been to Beijing. I understand this stuff. I've seen it firsthand. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And you got to understand in trade negotiation what Trump is talking about, like tariffs and all this stuff, making a big show and fuss about it. China doesn't do any of that stuff. They still own most of the world. That's because they're not dumb. They literally have all of the best shit and everybody wants it. That's why everyone is doing business with China and not us. It's because like it used to be that when we would buy quote unquote Chinese products, it would come with this stigma of like low quality, cheap, garbage kind of shit. Nope. They make way better phones than us, way better robots than us, way better AI software. Their drone fleets, their buildings are way crazier than ours, way cooler than ours, and they build them way faster than us. Like they built a hospital in 2 days, and not just like some little shitty, like a really big one, all fully fixed and figured out and everything. They do it in 2 days. They've been building energy infrastructure for decades. We're just starting.
It just seems like the whole Ukrainian conflict really did kick China's economy back into gear because that was this cheap source of energy from Russia. And Russia was trying to get rid of it, so they're like, "Yeah,
we put all the sanctions on Russia." So they made it so that Russia couldn't do business with the West. So who else are they going to go to? And China's happy to take their cheap oil, of course. And of course, now what that means is that anybody that is aligned with China also and does all the trade in yuan and has yuan balances, well, then they will also get access to cheap oil. And of course, you must understand the significance of this. So there's like literally no reason for any country in the world to not do business with China, and every reason to do business with China, and also every reason to not do business with America. All three things are true at the same time, presently, for pretty much everyone.
Right. If I could sum it all up to finish, it's like America's offer is way more expensive gas, right? And China's offer is we've got cheaper gas and better everything else.
And with trade tariffs now, also trade is also more expensive. So the tariff thing also made everything more expensive comparatively.
The only one who wasn't putting tariffs on everybody was China.
Yeah. They don't care. They want everyone to do business with them. They make everything. That the reason why it's a problem for America is because we don't make much. That's why we have to do all this trade stuff, and that's why it matters so much. But China makes everything, so they're the supplier of the world, and America is the demander.
Right?
That's the issue. The
Because we
roles
make
are
problems.
reversed. Yeah, well, yeah, we manufacture a lot of
Consumer.
problems. Yeah. So I didn't mean to be a total downer. I wasn't supposed to go into all the like finance stuff, but this stuff people need to know, and I wanted to document it somewhere.
No, I think that was great.
Yeah.
Don't apologize at all, sir. Do
Thanks.
you want to let anybody know? Is there any places that like you want to promote or anything? Any shows?
My ex got banned for
that's true.
whatever. So I mean, I'm social media literate. I was trying to do the X thing, and now it's still, even a month later, I'm still banned, and I don't know what to do about it. I can't do anything about it. I appealed. They just said one word, spam. I post less than once a day, or my average amount of posts is like less than once a day, and somehow I'm banned for spam. They don't tell me what I was spamming or why or what. There's no recourse. I just clicked the like sent in an appeal. They said appeal denied. Didn't tell me why. Just that's it. Done. So maybe I just need to start over with another one. I don't know. I haven't really figured it out. I've been dealing with a lot of problems, so social media was just not that high on my priority list. But maybe I should make it a little bit of a priority list.
Well, man, you got a great story. You could take that to much bigger podcast. We're really glad you brought it here. But I mean, look, you keep at it. You get to the bigger and bigger audiences, and people are going to actually think about this stuff and actually consider what's actually happened and where we're at right now.
I hope so.
I think
if you know anyone that wants to talk about this stuff, I'll help you.
Oh yeah, I can definitely push you off to some shows, man, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to do it. Like I said, I mean, I cover a lot of topics: archaeology, AI, finance. I'll have to do one on finance with you guys at some point.
Yeah, I already had somebody in the chat even say they'd really like you to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely know some
Yeah,
stuff.
then somehow we got to figure out a way to talk about the eyeballs. Just I don't know how.
Oh yeah,
discussion on that.
Okay. I mean, I'm not. By the way, I'm illiterate on the occult. I'm learning from you as I watch your stuff a little bit here and there. But yeah.
Thank you. No, that's good. Just knowing how it works would be interesting to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So all right, yeah. I guess you don't have anything to plug. Headless, why don't you let everybody know what's up with all your endeavors?
All right. Well, you can find me at the Headless Giant on YouTube and on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you have any sort of strange or esoteric, scary, spooky stories, you can send them to me at the Headless Giant Podcast at gmail.com, and we will read those on Thursdays. So check that out. Thank you very much. Oh, also got the trialogues coming up on Sunday. So check those out. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Headless. And tomorrow morning, check out Jules's that book club thing that he does, or whatever the reading he does. I don't know about Headless. I can speak for myself. I should be there, so definitely check it out. Yeah, Ashish, thank you again for coming on. That was really good.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Presentation. Oh hell yeah!
Absolutely, yeah. Spruced it up for you this time.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great.
But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff. Again, I've never heard anyone talk about it. I've really needed a way to get this stuff out there. It's not normally what I do. I don't normally do a whole lot of interviews, but it seems like that's what I got to do now. And I tried to do it the conventional way, but of course that didn't work. So this is the new path.
Oh, yeah, no,
well, you got mind-blowing stuff, and I think a lot more people would really appreciate that message, because I think we're discovering things about human intelligence that's not being talked about.
Absolutely. There's been discoveries made all over the place, nonstop, like way more than people realize, and just a lot of it is suppressed. And a part of it is just not having an avenue, because academia is a gatekeeper. And so if you don't have, if academia is blocking you, which is most people, then what else can you do? If I didn't happen to run into you at the Cosmic Summit, how would I get this out there? And so, yeah, I really appreciate that. This has been a really good opportunity for me, and I really want to get more people to see this stuff at least.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing a great job, man. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you, everybody in the chat. That's what's up. I appreciate you all spending this late Friday night.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there was definitely some good stuff being said in there. And again, Headless and Ashish, thank you very much for coming on. Hopefully, we'll get you on again. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.